So I got 0 people watching at the moment. 1 like somehow. Okay. Yeah, I'm live. So.
I don't see that.
All right, for anyone that joins the chat here, is watching the video, I'm going to post questions throughout the stream here the next 4 hours. And of course, any questions that anyone has, feel free to ask them, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Now, the first thing I have up here is a shot of the ice storm in Tennessee. And we can see here where we have all freezing rain now in Nashville. Some areas around Nashville are changing to rain currently. But for anyone that's lived there, again, we had about, I guess, 2 to 3 inches of snow before the change over to sleet and freezing rain yesterday evening. So let's kind of travel around the state of Tennessee at the moment and see what's going on. I think what we could do too is kind of go further to the north here, maybe north and west of Pleasant View. Might see something a little bit different in terms of accumulation here. You can see obviously on this traffic cam, north and west of Pleasant View, the roads are very treacherous, and we can actually see what appears to be sleet mixing in the background. And you can see where the roads are definitely snow and sleet covered. But from this point forward, mostly freezing rain for this part of Tennessee. Now, how about Western Tennessee? This was the area that was supposed to get probably the most freezing rain from this event. So again, if you're looking at the screen, and hopefully everyone can see it, in Western Tennessee, this is mostly freezing rain in this area. So let's do this for a moment. What I want to do now is to actually share the radar. Let's see if we can get this going. Yeah, so if we look over Nashville, we can see where things have changed back from rain to freezing rain in Nashville. Temperatures now falling below freezing once again. It's hard to believe that Nashville was in the teens late morning yesterday. So it's amazing to see the temperatures have risen as much as they have. But what we're seeing now in Western Tennessee here towards Jackson is a changeover to snow. And this is true all the way up through Kentucky. As far as snowfall amounts, Louisville through Cincinnati, Maysville, eastward into, let's say, maybe Athens, Ohio, this whole area probably received mostly snow. There was a changeover to sleet very quickly through Lexington, perhaps as far north as Louisville overnight. But that is then again changed back to snow here recently. We'll probably see some heavier snow amounts reported through Columbus, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then we really get into the heavier snows when we get up to Scranton, especially eastward into Albany, New York, and then finally into Boston. Uh, Snowfall rates of probably 2 to 3 inches an hour could be reported in the heaviest part of the storm. The next thing I want to show here is where the sleet is likely setting up. Um, if we look, let's say, into southern Pennsylvania, what likely appears as heavier snowfall is actually hmm? I'm live at the moment. It's not showing up. Huh? Interesting. So anyone watching currently, the screen is not showing up. So I'm going to try to take a little bit of time to work on that now. Hmm. Hmm. Huh. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that. Uh, this issue was really a non-issue, come to find out. I was getting a report from someone through text message that the screen was black, and maybe initially it was. So we'll get right back into it, and let's see if we can share a different screen. Um, All right, so the next thing I kind of want to show you guys is the latest high resolution model for the lower 48. And this is as of about 12 p.m. So again, just a few minutes ago, what the forecast was for rain, sleet, snow through the Ohio Valley, through the southeast and the northeast. And the big thing you'll notice here is this low pressure system over Tennessee. And again, you may or may not notice it actually, but what it's doing is it's creating this area of rain extending up from the Gulf Coast to West Virginia. And this is something that if you were to look at videos from different weather enthusiasts a week ago, what you would have noticed is that, yeah, that wasn't there. We didn't see the low pressure or the heavy rain really extending up into that area. And what it's really done is it's limited the amount of snowfall and ice really through the Ohio Valley. And this warm nose of air continues to push up against the western face of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, one thing too that you notice is that it's kind of two-sided, right? We see the warm air and the rain on the, let's say, the western side of the mountains. Yet on the eastern side of the mountains here in Virginia and North Carolina, it's cold enough for sleet. We can see that here by the pink on the screen. And then when you see, let's say, the lighter colors extending down that are more reddish into Carolina, that's more where we see the freezing rain. Another thing that's kind of different from a week ago, what we were seeing was precipitation over the Carolinas, maybe down into eastern Georgia. That is not the case this morning. And as we move forward in time, you'll notice that that dry slot really remains over the Carolinas. We are seeing reports where there is freezing drizzle in the eastern Carolinas, and there is a buildup of freezing rain in places like Raleigh, and also down to places such as Charlotte. And of course, there's heavier freezing rain over the western Carolinas in the mountains. So places like Asheville are still in the 20s at the moment and receiving freezing rain. Now, the idea is that all the sleet we're seeing over the mid-Atlantic will eventually change over to freezing rain in states such as Virginia and Maryland as we move forward in time. So basically, as we get into mid-afternoon, like 3, 4 o'clock, we should see that change over from sleet to freezing rain. Now, in the Northeast, we're seeing moderate to even heavy snowfall develop at this time. So let's just kind of zoom in there for a moment to kind of take a look at it. Now, you can see the heavier bands kind of periodically going through the Ohio Valley, let's say Western Pennsylvania, even parts of New York. We can see here as of about 4 p.m., some moderate snowfall over, let's say, much of New York State, a heavier band developing over Connecticut. And just as we're seeing a changeover in New York City, again, around 4 p.m. to sleet, there's probably going to be a very heavy burst of snowfall before that happens. Again, you can kind of see that here with the darker blues, hopefully on the screen, that is indeed heavier snowfall. So before that changeover, likely going to see some very heavy snowfall in New York City. And that'll just kind of be a sign of when it's about to happen. But if you live in interior Pennsylvania, right, upstate New York, much of Connecticut, Massachusetts, again, areas closer to shore, there is a changeover probably to sleet and freezing rain. More than likely, we won't see the rain extend into much of the Northeast over time. It will likely stay as either sleet or freezing rain for the duration of the event, especially for locations such as New York City to Boston. In fact, as you move further north and east, let's say into Hartford, Connecticut, this is going to stay all snow. Even as you go to Providence, Rhode Island, there will be a period of sleet, but even still, there will likely be heavy snow before that takes place. Further north and east over Boston, stays all snow for the duration of the event. So it looks really good there. So sorry, guys. Again, kind of a mishap for a first timer here on a live stream. But a lot of that you just missed, unfortunately. But we're kind of going through the HRR model. And what I was showing here on the screen was pretty much a time lapse of the weather using that high resolution model. So let's just kind of go back here a little bit so I can share it with you guys. And just to kind of be a little bit more brief, because people probably heard this listening on the video. But this particular model here, it starts at 12 p.m. in the afternoon and moves forward in time. Now, we can see here as of early afternoon, there is quite a deal of rain moving into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley. So with it, we have some warmer air, temperatures in the mid to upper 30s through much of Tennessee now and Kentucky. We even have temperatures rising above freezing in West Virginia. So again, it might be 33, 34 at the surface in Charleston, West Virginia. And then above you, it could be nearly 40 degrees 45 degrees. So temperatures are no longer able to support snow, sleet, or freezing rain here. Just plain old cold rain as you get into western parts of West Virginia. Now, it has stayed all snow and heavy at times in Indiana, Ohio, much of Pennsylvania. And now that heavier snow is going to move up into New York State and the rest of New England with time. And meanwhile, early afternoon, you're likely still seeing sleet over much of the state of Virginia. Reports out of the state of Virginia are anywhere from about 4 to 5 inches of sleet around the Lynchburg area, Roanoke area. Points south, even towards Danville, there have been reports of 3, 4, and 5 inches of sleet. So quite a storm there over the mid-Atlantic. You guys will likely see a change over to freezing rain as we get later into the afternoon, maybe after 4 p.m. These places that have been receiving heavy sleet overnight will finally see that change over to a period of moderate freezing rain. And that's when things will likely get really dangerous for you guys moving forward in time. What's also interesting here is the cold air over northern Georgia. If we were to take a look at a radio sound, again, this is a projected radio sound, this evening over North Georgia, basically north and east of Atlanta, if you're traveling there, we see temperatures at, let's say, 29 degrees, upper 20s into lower 30s. And there could be not only heavy rain moving over that area, but it could be heavy freezing rain. And what we've been seeing reports of in the south is thunder sleet, thunder freezing rain. And that's kind of been commonplace throughout the South as of last night, moving into this morning, and even early this afternoon. Another thing of concern, and we can't really pick up on it here necessarily, but you can see the yellows and reds here over Georgia, extending south and westward into Florida. What we're seeing there is likely severe weather, and there could be some thunderstorm activity this afternoon involved in that line of storms. So for anyone that far south that are thinking, yeah, we're out of the storm, it's not going to be affecting us, right, like everyone else. Well, if you're on the southern end of the storm, you have a different threat. You have severe weather potential involved. So that's just something to consider if you're traveling in South Georgia, even the western panhandle of Florida, and points to the east if you're traveling there. And as you move north and east, you can see where now South Carolina and North Carolina, many of you guys have just received light freezing rain with this event. Again, not the case for western South Carolina, western North Carolina. You guys have been receiving heavier precipitation overnight. But again, for the Piedmont region, again, mainly light freezing rain, light freezing drizzle. Overnight was the majority of reports coming out of those states. Except for, let's say, Raleigh, points north, there were some sleet reports there. And especially towards the Virginia border, there's been several inches of sleet reported. Now, I do not want to get hung up on the mid-Atlantic and southeast with this event. So let's just kind of go ahead and zoom in here. Again, hopefully all this is now showing up for you guys. But over the Northeast, let's say from Ohio to Maine, there's going to be moderate to heavy snowfall through about 6 p.m. And this will continue, of course, for Pennsylvania, likely through about 8 p.m. in most places. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is one such place that could be receiving moderate to heavy snowfall even through this evening. One thing you'll notice is that there is going to be another dry slot moving up the state of Virginia. Again, what will happen sometimes on the right side of the low pressure system, especially going over high terrain, there could be a huge break in precipitation. Again, this is influenced by geography typically. And what we'll see is that, yeah, we'll still have heavy snowfall likely over New York State, but we'll start to see lighter amounts over central Pennsylvania by 8 p.m. And this will likely work further to the north with time too, into the state of New York. Also at this time, we can see around 8 p.m., the freezing rain is beginning to finish up in the western part of the state of Virginia. Moderate to heavy freezing rain, though, is still continuing, let's say, points east of Lynchburg. So if you're driving in Richmond, let's say south to Petersburg, eastward towards Williamsburg, likely still see freezing rain in those areas at this time. And it's not to say the driving conditions are going to be good in this area. They're going to remain bad probably for the next several days, especially for those that live not on primary roads, but these secondary and back roads. Now, as we move forward in time, you see where the sleet is taken over New York City by this evening. Same thing for Long Island, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is going to be in an area where it's changing from sleet to freezing rain and then possibly even rain at this point. I think areas like Hartford, Connecticut, Providence, Rhode Island are going to be mainly snow. Providence could see a change over to sleet at a certain point, and this particular model is showing potentially by, let's say, around 10 p.m. there could be a changeover to sleet briefly. But again, we're getting towards the end of the system at that point. Boston, Massachusetts is likely seeing very heavy snow by around 10 p.m. And this is likely the case for much of the afternoon for Boston, though. Again, periods of moderate to heavy snowfall through this period of time. Another location I want to point out is upstate New York, again, from likely Syracuse to Albany. There's going to be periods of moderate to heavy snowfall throughout the afternoon. It looks like the heaviest amounts are going to be in the Capital District of New York. So if you're traveling there along 87, just be careful in that area in particular. But again, it looks like we're going to have several hours of heavy snowfall. Eastern portions of New York to, let's say, southern portions of Maine, and really points southward there as you get towards the I-95 corridor. Now, as far as this system wrapping up, it's going to wrap up for places in the south first. So New York City, up through much of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and then even north and east into much of Boston there. We can see it clearing up. So we'll go from heavy amounts of snowfall to the snow being wrapped up probably just after midnight. Now, this is not the case. Just get something for a second here. Now, this is not the case for upstate New York. So if you were to live, let's say, around Albany, Schenectady, the area, you'll probably still see light snow overnight. This is true for Vermont and New Hampshire and much of Maine as well. Now, I think this is a good point to kind of take a look and transition to some of the traffic cameras. And let's say maybe start in the state of Virginia and kind of move points northward from there. All right, so it'd be a good idea to kind of take a look at some of these traffic cams to understand what we're dealing with here in the mid-Atlantic to begin with. One place that's likely still receiving sleet, if we were to go in towards the center of the state, is around Lynchburg. So we can kind of go towards, you can see here on the map, we have Liberty University here. We can zoom into that area and just kind of take a look at, say, Business 29 here. Around the city of Lynchburg. Pick up on is the amounts of sleet. But generally speaking, anywhere from about 4 to 5 inches of sleet has fallen in this area. So we know some of the models were showing that at first, but it just seemed like ridiculous amounts, right? Now, most areas were calling for anywhere from 4 to, I guess, 8 inches of snow and sleet here. But yeah, I think we're seeing quite a bit here in the central part of Virginia. See, I just got a message here. I want to take a look here. All right, cool. But yeah, we're seeing in general amounts of about 4 to 6 inches here from Roanoke to places such as Lynchburg. Appomattox, Buckingham. So much of the central part of the state has received that much snow and sleet. Points to the north are receiving more because it's just more snow in general. So let's just kind of back out of this for a moment. Just going to take a moment here. We'll go back to 511 here, the website for viewing all this. And let's kind of take a look at, let's say, a place like, let's say, Stanton. Let's take a look at a place in the Shenandoah Valley here briefly. See what's happening there. Now, so if we look at Stanton, Virginia here, we can see some heavy snowfall still coming down. So as you get into the Shenandoah Valley, you can see where we've transitioned back to snow and sleet here in particular. So heavier amounts definitely as you get into the Shenandoah Valley. We could see anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of snowfall compared to what we're seeing down further south towards, let's say, US 460. One thing I want to point out too, it seems like every time I hit screen share, it seems like my image comes up as well as any, let's say, image that I was trying to share on the screen before. So let's say I'm trying to share the radar or trying to show one of these traffic cams. It seems like it is working every time I do it, but in between, that transition seems not to be working. So let's do this. Let's kind of take a look at some of the messages here and just kind of get an update from what different people are saying. Okay, so I'm seeing where Albany has about 2 inches of snow. Let's see if I can, how we answer all of these here. Okay. So that's great to hear. Seton Newton, I'll go ahead and write that down here. 999. See if it'll let me respond in like manner here. And we'll say, please let us know about what you have throughout the stream. Okay, and then we also have from Candy Jane. Hey, update, New York, we are getting about 2 inches here. Okay, so I got 2 people from New York State. So that's good to hear. So let's do this at Candy Jane. See if it'll let me do it. You guys could see over a foot of snow. So yeah, hopefully that all shows up for you guys in the chat here. But yeah, appreciate any comments throughout this. This will kind of make it more fun, hopefully, for everybody involved, especially when it's like a small event like this. I've watched live events before where there seems to be hundreds, if not thousands, of these messages moving through, and that just makes it really difficult to respond to. So let's do this. We'll kind of back out of this screen for the moment. See if it'll let me do it here. All right, so what we're going to do, and kind of move further north here and just check out maybe some other areas in the state. We were seeing in the Shenandoah Valley where there was some snowfall still occurring. So I'd imagine if we go up towards, let's say, Winchester, that area, probably still all snow there as well. Just kind of get a brief look at this. And you can kind of tell from the camera itself that we're losing visibility, and that's usually a good sign that there's still a lot of snow out there mixing in the precipitation. So again, a place like Winchester is likely to see closer to a foot of snow. So let's go ahead and kind of back out of the well. And then if we were to go, let's say, towards Washington, D.C., this is very important for a lot of people. Again, close to 4 million people live near D.C., I think even on the Virginia side. So let's go ahead and take a look at, see if we're still seeing snow. It looks like we're seeing a good deal of sleet mixing in near DC area. So if anyone happened to come across this and be able to share what you're actually receiving in the area, that would be great to hear about. But I would imagine somewhere around 6 inches of snow mixed with sleet has occurred thus far. One thing maybe we can take a look at later is the actual amounts around this area. But let's see. I do want to back out of 511 for now and just kind of take a look around the country and see maybe we can find some other traffic cams currently. And one of the places I want to take a look at is maybe Eastern Tennessee. Now, this area is supposedly changed over to rain, right? In many locations. So if I were to go down to a place like Chattanooga and take a look, let's say, along the river here, let's see if we can see anything on the webcam here. Did you guys see any sleet, snow, or freezing rain? So along US 27 South, it looks like along the river at least, not much. What was forecast here in the last at least 48 hours is that this area would be receiving predominantly rainfall and maybe up to 2 inches of rainfall. So that part of the forecast is definitely held here. That warm nose of air did move far enough north, cleared out all the cold air that we were experiencing during the day yesterday, right? So just yesterday, I think it was in the 20s, at least briefly in this area. So again, all of the snow and sleet, if we did receive any in this area, is now gone. All right. So, but again, in contrast, if I were to go back, let's say just to the west of Nashville, let's say go out towards maybe Dixon, stream not available. Let's go a little bit further to the east, stream not available. So hopefully one of these cameras works. It makes you wonder if the ice has taken out some of these cameras in Tennessee. Okay, there's a network failure there along I-40. Let's see if we have anything here. Yeah, we might have to actually go closer to Nashville itself to see anything. So maybe if we were to be just outside the city here, we could see something. All right, so maybe near the Parthenon. Yeah, nothing's working here, unfortunately. Yeah, it was working before. So that, strangely enough, it was working before. One thing I'm going to do real quick here, Chad, is I'm going to go ahead and hook up my computer. It's about ready to die. I didn't realize it. So just one moment with that. I want to stop sharing for a moment. All right, so I think the next thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the radar once again, share that. Also, in the meantime, I'm going to take a look at chat and see if we have any other updates here from different people that are watching our stream. Let's see. Well, that's nice. Thank you, Candy Jane, for liking the report so far. Yeah, so I will be on from now until about 4 p.m. That is the plan currently. So I'm gonna go ahead and write that in for anyone that may see this later. All right. All right, guys. So hopefully you can see this as well. We have the current radar here over the Tennessee Valley. Um, it's really cool to see this, where you have such extreme temperature changes along one individual state. And you can see here in eastern Tennessee that heavy rainfall, right? That was moving through Knoxville, Chattanooga. Chattanooga was the place before we were looking at the live video from in Tennessee. And what I wanted to point out here as well is that as you move into western Tennessee, you can see in Jackson and even towards Memphis, right? We have these temperatures in the teens, and we can see lighter snowfall, right? Amounts in that area. Now, as you move further east, you can see over Nashville, temperatures rising into the lower 30s, right? Still cold enough, at least in the western part of town. Let's see if we can move this forward here. Just to see the latest temperatures. Let's see if it'll let us show it here. Let's do this here. Let's exit out of one of these, and hopefully that'll give us enough RAM, enough computer memory here to do this, because it's kind of struggling at the moment. Okay, there we go. So the latest temperatures in and around Nashville are in the lower 30s. So we can see that here. We can see where there's likely a transition from rain to freezing rain to eventually sleet and snow. The snowfall is being projected up in Clarksville. Now, we just know from watching these videos, likely, right, for anyone watching now, that when you see blue on the map here representing snow, it does not necessarily mean snow. Again, this will likely be in the form of sleet if we're seeing a transition from freezing rain to that next coldest layer, more or less. Now, as we get up into Kentucky, I would not doubt that we're seeing snowfall, a change to snowfall at least in Louisville. Again, this is as of about 12:50 in the afternoon here on Sunday. And as you move into Lexington, again, we're seeing more of that frozen precipitation. I don't know when the changeover back to snow will occur, but I would say you're probably going to see at least another hour of sleet and freezing rain there, just based on the movement of the radar. Let's just see if we can get a good idea of what's happening in Lexington, Kentucky. Yeah, around Mount Sterling, just to the east of that, yeah, there's plenty of rainfall. To the west of that, towards Frankfort, Louisville, you start transitioning into that sleet and snow again. Again, as we saw with the forecast, it looked like Louisville up to Cincinnati. That was kind of a sweet spot for mainly snow with this event. And anyone living there, and let's say in Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, if you could send a message about snowfall amounts or ice amounts, that would be helpful here. We can definitely talk about that in the chat. Now, further south and east, again, areas that were projected to see 8, 9, 10 inches of snowfall last weekend are now instead seeing rainfall today. And places like Pikeville, Kentucky, again, saw 3 inches of snowfall yesterday, transitioned to that freezing rain overnight, and now it's struggling to maintain that. Now, the radar is picking up on some of these colder valleys, I guess, still remaining as freezing rain. But a lot of these areas have transitioned to just plain old rain. And I think that's good news for a lot of you guys. I know it's washing away the snow, it's washing away the sleet, but it's also preventing the rainfall from building up on the power lines. And this is going to really save you guys, I think, from seeing those power outages that people in Western Tennessee, Western Mississippi, parts of Arkansas have experienced right so far. And that's probably going to be the next thing that we should look at after we go through the radars, kind of discuss the power outages across the country. Now, as we move further to the east, you'll notice here that it jumps into the 40s. Now, why is that? It's colder both to the left and the right of the screen. How's that even possible? What we're likely seeing here with this 41-degree temperature, or even these lower 40s in general, just pause it and move it to the right here for a moment. What you're likely seeing here is warm air further up in the atmosphere. And what I mean by that is that this area along Route 23 through Big Stone Gap and Norton, I bet you the elevation is much higher there. It might be 4,000 feet, or maybe between 2,500 and 4,000 feet. And that's catching that warmer air that's moving overhead. And this is actually giving you a glimpse of how warm that air in that warm nose is above the ground. Again, we're getting into the 40s as you get up several thousand feet in the atmosphere. And of course, that's enough to turn this to either plain old rain, keep it as freezing rain near the surface, or even, in this case, it would prevent any sleet from even forming. So yeah, over Western Virginia here in the higher elevations, again, I imagine near Big Stone Gap and places like that, you're probably at least 3,000 feet in that area. That's picking up on those higher elevation temperature rises that we're seeing involved with that warm nose of air, again, associated with that low pressure system that's formed in the Tennessee Valley. But what a shock. You get over the Appalachians here, you get into Interstate 81 near Wytheville, and lo and behold, it's still in the teens. So big time difference here. And you can kind of see the dramatic impact of that cold air damming that's taking place east of the Appalachian Mountains. So that's kind of crazy. And that is the case for much of the state of Virginia. We see some temperatures here ranging from as low as 10 degrees to as high as maybe 20 degrees over much of central Virginia. There is another warm push of air, though. If you were to go over here to Virginia Beach, temperatures have risen into the 40s in comparison to yesterday. Even some 50s here around the Outer Banks. So now we have this kind of squeeze effect that's occurring where you have warm air coming in from the Atlantic and also from the Tennessee Valley via the Gulf of Mexico, right? And this squeeze effect is going to be occurring over the Carolinas and Virginia, but I think the cold air damming is going to be too strong this time, where we're going to see either freezing rain or sleet through the Piedmont region, at least, of all three of those states. Now, further to the south, my goodness, over Alabama, we've got at least straight line winds with these group of thunderstorms here. So we probably have from, again, south of Atlanta towards Macon, Georgia, an area where it's transitioning from freezing rain to rain. You will likely see some thunderstorms this afternoon, and these could be quite strong. I would say anywhere from a place like Auburn or Columbus that we're seeing here on the map. Montgomery, Alabama has probably experienced thunderstorms this afternoon. But through much of South Georgia, much of southern Alabama here, and the panhandle of Florida, you can see a strong line of thunderstorms here moving through these states. And that will be the headline for you guys that live in this area probably through the afternoon. But it's crazy. Look at these temperature differences here. It goes from the 70s in southwestern Georgia to mid 30s here once you get up to Macon, Georgia. And Macon is pretty much near the center of the state of Georgia. But again, it shows you that nearly 40-degree temperature change that's occurring. Again, that's kind of adding fuel here to this line of storms and the front that's associated with it. A front, by the way, that is attached to this low pressure over Tennessee. Again, over the Carolinas, mainly light precipitation up to this point. We're seeing light freezing rain, light freezing drizzle. That can do just as much damage, though, unfortunately. And there's no runoff. So unlike with heavy rain, a lot of that can just run off the car, run off the power lines, not build up as quickly. Unfortunately, over, let's say, Columbia, South Carolina, through much of the western part of the state into Greenville, I could see those light amounts of, let's say, freezing rain really adding up quickly. And Greenville, South Carolina might be saved here once the heaviest precipitation moves in overhead. Again, it's a bit higher up. You can actually see the temperatures are rising slightly more than the Piedmont region of the state. Same thing is true as you get further west and north into South Carolina. We see temperatures beginning to rise up to 30 degrees. You guys might be safe in the sense that once this heavy rain moves in, it might be in the form of rain. And that might be a saving grace for these higher elevations in South Carolina. You could see that change over from freezing rain to rain sooner than the Piedmont. Charlotte, I don't see y'all being saved. I think y'all are going to be in a difficult position. You're lower elevation, of course, than the mountains to the west. That cold air damming is going to be significantly stronger in that region. So likely all freezing rain or sleet for that particular location. Same thing is true for locations to the north in Greensboro, also Durham and Raleigh. I believe you guys will probably be predominantly freezing rain through the rest of this event. Now, Virginia has seen heavier precipitation. I think it's going to stay heavier precipitation in comparison to the Carolinas. And in general, you guys have been saved by the colder air. It's been sleet predominantly through much of the state. I do believe once the heavier round of precipitation comes in later this afternoon, so this batch of moisture back here in Tennessee and Alabama, once that moves in, you're going to probably see a transition to all freezing rain. So I think the heaviest amounts for you guys, Maryland into Virginia, eastern portions of West Virginia, the heaviest portions are going to come in time when you see that band of rain move out of Tennessee and Kentucky, approach you guys. Now, if we're looking at Ohio, Pennsylvania, much of New Jersey, into New York State, again, predominantly moderate to heavy snowfall for you guys at this time. So we're looking at 1 p.m. into 1:30 p.m. The current radar here in these states, it looks really good in terms of staying all snow from Columbus to Pittsburgh to, let's say, even Allentown, Pennsylvania, driving on 78 East there towards New York City. You probably won't see a changeover to sleet until you cross into New Jersey towards New Brunswick or even Newark. I think locations here along the coastline, such as New York City, Long Island, will experience some changeover at some point as we approach the end of the storm. So I would say maybe around that 5 to 7 p.m. mark, you'll probably see a changeover to sleet at that point. Further to the north here, let's say as you get into Binghamton, northward into Syracuse, even westward towards Rochester, Buffalo, all snow for you guys. Very cold snow indeed. I mean, we're seeing single digits in many locations here. Move towards Albany, again, all snow for you guys. And then also we can see over much of Massachusetts, right into Maine, single digits for you guys. I think Boston's going to see all snow. And again, moderate to heavy snow from this point forward. And this will be the case through about 9 p.m. for much of New York State into New England. So that's what we have to expect. What I want to do now is kind of stop it here for a moment. We'll zoom out. Again, you can kind of see the current radar on the screen, get a general idea of the temperatures here, right? Single digits over New England, 30s into the Carolinas, and then we start getting the 40s in Tennessee, and then eventually 70s into Florida. So gives you an idea of the temperature profile here, and then also the precipitation type. So let's take a look at the live stream and see if we have any questions at the moment. Let's see. Woke up to a nice coating of snow in Santa Fe, and this is from Impassion. Nothing crazy, but still coming down. We need it. We don't want a parched spring and summer. I agree with you fully there. So let's see. Thank you. All right, so let's see if we have any other questions here in the chat before I move along. Let's do that. Let's see if we can, yeah, let's kind of take a look back here at the radar for a moment. And it looks like towards Santa Fe, we kind of get a general idea of what's still happening out here, since we have a viewer out there at the moment. Yeah, it looks like some light snow around the city there still. Temperatures in the teens and 20s. I guess it would be still morning out there as well. Okay. Now, yeah, New Mexico got some heavy snow overnight. It looks like, of course, northern Texas, central Texas had a major winter storm, of course, associated with what we're seeing back further to the east. Fort Worth, Texas, Dallas, yeah. It looks like you guys are still getting some light precipitation overhead, probably just flurries at this point. And then, of course, north and west of Abilene, a little bit more snow there towards Lubbock. Now, let's go back for a moment to maybe finding some, let's see if we can find some webcams here over Pennsylvania, get an idea of what's happening there. So I'm going to take a moment here and see if I can find something. Traffic cams in Pennsylvania. Guys, it might take me another moment here to find it. Let's do this. I'm going to stop this for a moment. And what we're going to do now is take a quick look at what's happening northbound. This is Interstate 99 near Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. Again, it looks like you have at least a half foot of snow here on the ground. I don't know how much of this is from before, but the roads are definitely covered. Again, temperatures here probably close to 10 degrees in Pennsylvania. And I imagine the road conditions are going to be terrible for the rest of the evening and especially overnight. But yeah, this gives you a glimpse at what's happening currently in Pennsylvania. Let's take a look here. This is eastbound in Pennsylvania on US 22. Yeah, so Mifflintown, this area. So complete whiteout in this area. Let's see if we can find this. So US 22, 322, and this is, again, eastbound in Pennsylvania. I wish I knew where this was. I do know where Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is. So we can take a look at that here in a moment and see the snowfall there. Looks like we have another location here. So Interstate 99 once again. And this is pretty much whiteout conditions again here. Northbound to Blair, Pennsylvania. And let's see if we have any others we can take a look at here. currently it's showing black on the screen. Okay, let's see if I can fix that here. There might be certain things I can't show you, chat. Let's see. Again, we're just figuring this out together today. So let's see if we can get back to the traffic cams here. Okay. I'll show you one last location here. So this is 160 near Glencoe Road here. Again, another area of Pennsylvania that looks to be a whiteout. And I'm getting reports that the screen is going black for whatever reason. I'm doing much of the same thing. And there just, again, might be certain things I can't share, certain websites I can't share, unfortunately. So again, we're seeing certain webcams here in Pennsylvania showing whiteout conditions. So unfortunately, I think for a lot of you guys, it's not showing up for whatever reason. But yeah, let's just go and continue forward. We'll take a look back at the HRR model for a moment and see if we have a latest update here in terms of snowfall totals. Again, it'd just be moving forward pretty much from, again, noon today into tonight. So let's kind of back it up here for a moment. And the next thing I want to show you here is the actual amounts projected in this one model, at least, of snowfall. So a lot of you guys have received plenty of snow so far, right, throughout the Mid-Atlantic. And as we move forward in time, over, let's say, Pennsylvania, New York State, into New England, we're seeing amounts of maybe 6 to 10 inches of snowfall over much of the Northeast here. And again, a lot of these areas have picked up a half a foot of snow already, right? If you're in southern Pennsylvania, even western portions of the state, you've picked up a good half a foot of snow. So what we're seeing here is really in addition to what you've already gotten this afternoon. And the same thing is true over eastern Ohio. So let's see. Again, I'm getting reports from people that it's not showing up on the screen. So I'm not sure what's happening here. Well, chat, I'm going to just move ahead here and just, I think what's happening, just to let you know, is just for whatever reason, it's either my computer or YouTube is just not showing up. So I'm going to continue as I would normally. And I think what you'll see is that it comes in and out at times. But what ends up happening is as I share different screens here, you might lose my image briefly. And I think that's kind of what's happening part of the time. But then there also might be something on the back end here regarding YouTube that's creating an issue. So let's get back here to the high resolution model just briefly. So yeah, if we look over the Northeast, we can see an additional foot of snow really over the Albany district or the Capital District there in upstate New York. We can also see an additional 12 to maybe 15 inches in northern parts of Connecticut and close to another foot over Boston. But this entire area you're seeing in green, we're talking about an additional foot of snowfall from noon this afternoon to the end of the system, which will probably be closer to midnight if you live in Boston. So the heaviest snowfall will be occurring pretty much from now on if you live in the Northeast. And as far as the total accumulated precipitation, again, this is in addition to what you've already seen pretty much up to about 12 p.m. this afternoon. You can see that there's another 1/2 inch of precipitation that could fall from Virginia northward into Pennsylvania and also into western New York. The heaviest precipitation from this point forward, however, is going to be over the Delmarva Peninsula, northward into New Jersey here, New York City, Hartford, Connecticut, into Boston, Massachusetts. So this whole area could pick up an additional nearly 3/4 to an inch of precipitation, again, liquid equivalent here. So again, if this were to stay all snow over New York City, you would have seen an additional foot of snow from this point moving forward. Same thing for South New Jersey. It looks like you guys are going to have the heaviest amount of precipitation between now and the end of the storm. However, a lot of you are changing to rain over that area. So yeah, that's going to really cut down on the snowfall totals in New England. Again, we're seeing that low pressure form off the coast of the Delmarva Peninsula, so the secondary low, and that's bringing in even more warm air from the Atlantic. And unfortunately for you guys that love the snow, in places like Long Island, you're seeing that changeover occur. And it is occurring a bit earlier than what model guidance was showing 48 hours ago. So I think the next thing we can take a look at here is maybe some other models. So we could take a look at, let's say, the European model. And this, I think, is for the 6Z. Let's do this because this is misleading to a lot of us. This actually starts from about early morning, Sunday morning, moving forward. So a lot of what you're seeing here in West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee has already fallen. So what we want to do, I think would be more helpful, is just look at the precipitation type projected over this area using the European model. Now, according to this, the latest European model as of this morning was showing snow over Northern Virginia, basically down to Highway 460 at about 4 a.m. And then moving forward in time, that would change over to sleet and freezing rain. Again, the European model just does not do a good job of showing sleet. You can see little dots of it here that are indicated over much of the transition zone, but it doesn't do a good job of showing the reality of what's actually happening on the ground. Now, another thing that's kind of interesting here, you can see the war that's going on between the cold air and the warm air. If you look over the Appalachian Mountains here in Western Virginia, you can see these lines of pressure here, right? They're running down the state boundary between Virginia and West Virginia. And that's showing you not only the pressure gradient, but likely the temperature gradient over that zone. And this cold air, of course, is going to win the battle on the eastern side of the mountains. Now, we can see here early in the morning, there was a very heavy band of snowfall, likely moving through Louisville, Kentucky, north of Charleston, West Virginia, and also in the Shenandoah Valley, right, where we're seeing those heavier amounts of snowfall on the traffic cams. Now, as we move forward in time, we can see where that heavy snow went over, let's say, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, through much of Delaware, right, southern New Jersey, and even heavier snow back over Ohio and Indiana with time. And at the same time, you see all this heavy rain begin to take the place of the sleet and the snow as far north as Kentucky and western parts of Virginia. And this was as of about 7 a.m., the forecast here. Now, I think in most cases, this is correct. We're seeing on the radar in some of the deeper valleys, temperatures stay below 32 for much longer. But as we move forward in time using this model, heavy snow continued over Pennsylvania, right? New Jersey. That transition from sleet to freezing rain was occurring, or from snow to sleet was occurring even over Northern Virginia at this time. Again, likely sleet all the way down, let's say, to the North Carolina border at least. So the model's not picking up on that. It's just suggesting all freezing rain early this morning. That was not true. And then you can see where the rain is extending into West Virginia at this time. Again, I think it was fairly accurate in general. Some of the areas here in, let's say, western parts of the state of West Virginia were receiving rain at this point. And then we can see where it was projecting freezing rain through the afternoon over Virginia, and this transition really zone to rain occurring over much of the state of West Virginia, um, Kentucky, and also Tennessee here. And the places that are not going to be as impacted over the western Piedmont of North Carolina. So that area was being suggested, at least, that it would stay all freezing rain. Um, One thing the European model does well is it does forecast precipitation amounts really well a week out. It does a great job of that. One thing it doesn't do as well as we get towards the last day before the storm is it doesn't really work well with geography too well. And so, broadly speaking, it does really good with latitude amounts. It can kind of pick up on, oh, this will generally be snow here, or ice here, or rain here. And generally speaking, it's done well here, even in the recent model run. It doesn't do very well with mountains, though. It doesn't really do well with elevation changes. And what it's not going to do as well with the HRR by comparison, that high resolution model, it's not going to pick up on little things like elevation rises. And that's not going to pick up on that trapping of cold air that takes place east of the mountains. So, again, this model here is different from what you would see in the HRR. I think by comparison, it would be good to show that. So let's go there briefly. And again, we can kind of see here over the Western Carolinas in general, the HRR is picking up better on the cold air that's in place. And I would believe this more than I would the European model at this point, even though the European is very good at projecting what will happen a week from now. I would say the day of the storm, the HRR is way better, and it's more accurate at predicting those precipitation amounts and also the precipitation type that will be occurring. Now, seeing the freezing rain and the sleet, I do think with this band that's moving in later from Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, once it moves into the mid-Atlantic, that has the best chance to change that over to freezing rain, perhaps all freezing rain in central Virginia. You'll likely see the temperature finally go up a little bit when that final band moves through. But again, cold air damming is a very hard thing to predict. So even with the HRR, this could be wrong. You could still see sleet in Charlottesville. You could still see sleet in Lynchburg. I think places that will likely, if they haven't already changed over to freezing rain, will be places like Danville, down to Winston-Salem and Raleigh. I think you guys will be seeing primarily that form of frozen precipitation at that point. Further north, I think this is correct. I think what we're seeing here, the forecast for sleet over New Jersey, New York City at this point, again, being around 5 p.m., I think that's accurate. So I think any snow amounts that we're measuring over New York City, the best time to probably do that is around 4 p.m. this afternoon. And then after that point, you're going to see more and more sleet mixing into that precipitation that is falling. All right, so I think what we'll do now is go back and take a look at chat and kind of keep up with what's going on there. Yeah, so I just got a message here talking about sharing camera shots. Um, yeah, I think what we can do is maybe go around and take a look at different images that have been taken, maybe on social media. What's harder for me to do is to get up during the stream and maybe take pictures of what's happening here. It's one of those things I'd really have to take a break from and then somehow post. But what I will do, I do want to share my X account or my Twitter account with you guys. And it's still what you're seeing here on the screen at P85 Weather. That's just on X. So if you were to go there, let's see if I can go ahead and upload it, get it to work for us. Hmm. All right. So I think I finally figured it out. But yeah, it's the same thing as what you're seeing for YouTube. It's at P85 Weather. So if you wanted to take a look at that on Twitter, you could post any images or videos, GIF, whatever you wanted to show there for weather. That's something that you could do, and then I could share them live on this stream with you guys. So that's something we could do together if you'd like. And also, Candy Jane, I think what I can do in the future is maybe prepare for something like that, where I have maybe video or pictures that have already been taken, and then we can maybe upload those during the stream. So that's something we could do in future. Okay, so Candy Jane, you must have someone else next to you there. You said a question from another viewer. What is an HRR model? Okay. I think the best thing for me to do is not type that in chat, but just discuss it with you guys. The HRR model is just a high resolution model. It's it's something that is basically it picks up on the terrain much better than the European model that we were discussing, and it is an American model, and it's something that can actually be developed every hour. So if you were to go to, let's see, I think the best thing to do is kind of go ahead and share the screen here with you guys so you can see that. Um, so hopefully you can see this with me as we take a look at it. But if I were to go up here to the top right-hand corner and right below this tab for climate, you'll see the runtime here. And then below that, even you can see the forecast time. So this shows you the approximate time this precipitation to the left will be falling. So when you see 6 p.m., January the 25th, that again, that's representative of 6 p.m. in this region, so the East Coast. That's standard time on January the 25th. Now, what's interesting is I can click up here and I can look at the previous hour's forecast, and it will be slightly different. So if I were to look back at, let's say, 16Z, you can kind of see that here. Hopefully this is showing up for you guys. Hopefully that is. What I'm trying to do at the moment is share the HR model. But yeah, in this particular instance, hopefully it does pop back up for you guys. But if you look at the runtime here and it says 16Z, again, that's as of about, that's supposed to be basically the 11 a.m. run. If I go to 17Z, that's the latest run. And I can pick basically any hour previously, and I can do a comparison for trends, right? And I can look at, okay, the snowfall forecast has changed, right, from the previous hour. And this is how much it has actually changed. So if I want to look at, let's say, again, 17Z over Albany, New York, right? Let's say I want to click in here at about 43 degrees north here. I can take a look at what the change is, right? And I can look at all the data for that particular area. Now, I'm not going to break this down, what you're seeing here in the sounding, but I can do a comparison here between what was forecast for a particular model run, this being the 17Z, or about the 12 p.m. model run. And I can compare that to an hour previous. Let's say I wanted to now look at the previous hour, the 16Z run. And you can see how there's a slight difference in the pretty much the heaviness of the snow, right, that's occurring over the Northeast. It's actually projecting heavier snow a little bit further to the west of the city of Albany. And that's a slight change, right? Again, you would have to really look closely at this map to see that change. But it's something like anyone that's really loves doing what I'm doing here would be interested in, where you look at those minor differences, right, on a map based on the latest forecast. Again, if I were to go back to 17Z, again, unfortunately, the whole screen is jumping when I do this. We could see where this darker blue here is moved off further to the east, or it's projected to in this particular forecast. I think where you might see the most jarring change is to go back even further in time. So if I were to go back to the 14Z, just to give you an idea of why this could be effective for forecasters, one big thing I see on the screen that's completely different, or has changed at least, compared to the most recent model run, is that this area over central Pennsylvania, this area over western New York and western Pennsylvania, still shows pretty good snow. It's lighter snow, but it's still showing pretty good snow going back to 3 or 4 hours ago with the snow projections. If I were to go back to now 17Z, one thing you'll notice over parts of Pennsylvania and parts of Ohio, and over these states of Pennsylvania and New York in general, is that not only are there these holes in precipitation, but you also have lighter amounts being projected over western New York and central Pennsylvania. And what that tells me as a forecaster is that there's dry slots that are working their way in to the system. And this really happens when you have a stronger low pressure than what is expected. And what that does, and the reason for it, is that there's usually very strong frontogenesis in a particular area of development. And there's usually a very strong cold front or front that's extending from the system that will draw away some of that moisture. And if I were to look over, let's say, central Virginia at this time, if I were to do a really detailed analysis here, I would notice that there's probably a heavy band of pink that's moving through the central part of North Carolina, as well as Virginia at this time. And that's probably heavier than what was previously shown. So what's happening is more or less that energy is going somewhere else. And that means that, yeah, that additional energy over Ohio, Pennsylvania is being directed somewhere else in the storm. And one place I'm seeing it is over central Virginia, central North Carolina, some heavier precipitation being projected in this latest run. Another area that I kind of see here is along, let's say, this New Jersey, Pennsylvania area here, where there's probably heavier precipitation in general. And even more so off the coast here with that developing low pressure system, there might be more energy downstream of that that's being projected. But overall, if you look at the snow line, if you look at the rain line and the transition between precipitation types, the placement of the storm, all of that's pretty much the same from run to run, especially if you go out maybe 3 or 4 hours with this high resolution model. It does a good job of keeping the precipitation basically where it's supposed to be at. So I think it's really good for that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Candy Jane, about the HRR model. Again, it's just a high resolution model. Again, it takes account of things like terrain, your local geography, local elevation changes, more or less. And it does a really good job at saying, okay, cold air is going to be locked in better in this location because I'm taking account of the mountain chain. European model, great model, really good model. And it's very good for forecasting a week out. And if I were looking for a storm a week from now, that's the model I would use. However, if I'm looking at local forecasting that takes account of mountain chains, takes account of warm water, right? Like the Atlantic Ocean, the influence of the Gulf Stream, the high resolution model is going to do a much better job at that. So I hope that kind of answers your question there. It's very hard for me to both show that and write that in the comment section. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so I think what would be interesting to take a look at now is the New York Mesonet. So I'm going to try to pull that up next and see what's happening around New York State. All right, guys, so I stopped sharing screen for a moment. It's going to probably go black for just a minute. So what I'm sharing now, and again, I don't know if it'll take a moment to show up or not, but is the New York Mesonet. So this is showing weather on the small scale, right, of what's happening from town to town, city to city. And this is a great website. And hopefully this is something that other states will implement with time. And I think other states have. It's just that they're few and far between. And this provides weather stations throughout the state. And you can see a photo of what's actually happening on the ground in different locations. This one here is set in Voorheesville. That's one station that's just kind of the default here. And let's take a look at that here for a moment. What's happening in Voorheesville? This is a place a little bit higher elevation than Albany, just to the west. And this gives you an idea here. If you were to look at this, pretty much this just measuring stick off to the side here of the fence, where it says 1, 2, 3, that's feet of snow. So if we were to get 1 foot of snow, you would see that one likely get covered later. And that's what we're projecting here in upstate New York, is at least a foot of snow. So that would be kind of interesting to take a look at around 4 p.m. Maybe that's where we can kind of end this video, this live stream, is taking a look at this video here, or this still shot here that will be updated. And we'll take a look again towards the end to see how much snow we've actually gotten. So that's Voorheesville, New York. What if I were to take a look at other locations around the state? Let's say we were to get closer to New York State itself. Check my live stream, make sure this is actually working. Okay, so it looks like we're still working. I'm going to go down here for a moment, closer to New York City. And we can see here that just to the north here, this says the Bronx. So still in New York City here. We have a temperature of 8 degrees outside. The winds are gusting to 24 miles per hour. And the snow depth is projected around 8 inches. So let's take a quick look at that here. So again, this is a building in the Bronx, and we can kind of see here the big snowflakes that are falling, and really this beautiful church off to the right. Wow. This is the first time I've taken a look at this image, I believe, but it's really pretty in the snow. I will say that. So 8 degrees, likely heavy snow there in southern New York State. And again, it's showing 8 inches at the moment in this area. Let's see if we can exit out of this briefly and take a look around New York City. So if we were to go to Queens, again, it looks like Queens is reporting 8 inches of snow at the moment. We have a temperature of 13 degrees, wind chill of -2. Fun. That is fun stuff there. So yeah, look at this. This is a complete whiteout almost. And we've got, again, heavy snow coming down. You can see here by the white specks or dots falling out of the sky. This is very heavy snow. Those big snowflakes are involved with it, and it's adding up very quickly. So we'll exit out of that. So throughout New York City, we're seeing in Queens, the Bronx area, seeing heavy snow there. What if we were to go a little bit further to the south and east? Again, we're picking up on that winter storm warning there. Now, into Long Island here, we're seeing still about 7 inches of snowfall. Again, temperatures are still quite cold. We're seeing about 16 degrees here at this location. Let's take a look at the image. This looks really pretty. Yeah, this is a pretty backdrop here with the trees. But yeah, it's still coming down heavy here in Long Island. As of 1:30, they've got about 7 inches of snow. Now, what if we were to go across, I guess, the East River, right? Maybe, I don't know. I guess across the Hudson at least. Let's take a look at, again, winter storm details there. Staten Island. So just like we were seeing in Long Island, we have about 7 inches of snow on the ground. Temperature of 15 degrees there. Looks like we have a wind chill of 0. And yeah, in Staten Island, it looks like we're completely covered in snow. May not be quite as heavy here. I wonder when they'll have that transition to sleet. Um, the high resolution model was showing again between about 5 and 7 p.m., maybe a little bit sooner. It looks like the system has been much warmer than predicted, especially going back a day ago. That transition to sleet and freezing rain everywhere has been much quicker than expected. So that could be the case here, even over Staten Island. They would probably be the first in the New York City area to transition to that wintry mix. All right, so we're up near the Capital District. We just took a look at New York City. A place I would expect to already have a ton of snow on the ground would be out here towards Buffalo. So let's go ahead and take a look at Buffalo for a moment. And let's take a look at what's happening there. Again, snow is coming down heavy there. What's interesting, and again, I wish I had taken a look at this before the storm, there's only about 5 inches of snow on the ground. I actually expected way more from lake effect to have piled up in this area. So I wonder, and it wasn't very warm in the last few days here. I wonder if this has been cleared off to measure the new snow. I am not sure, but again, I would have expected more to have piled up in this region at this point. And not just from the storm, right? I think 5 inches for this storm makes sense, but I wonder if I were to go really far north, right, to a place like Belleville, right, or even Harrisburg, right, towards the Tug Hill Plateau, if I'd see way more snow. And lo and behold, if I go to Harrisburg, to the east of Lake Ontario, they're showing about 26 inches of snow on the ground. Now that makes more sense. So up here in the Tug Hill Plateau, there's already over 2 feet of snow. Again, probably the vast majority of it, at least probably 20 inches of it, it's probably from previous snowstorms, right? Lake effect snowstorms that have come through this area. But this is really cool. And, you know, over Albany, places like that, and upstate New York, we could see, I don't think 26 inches, but we could see something that looks similar to this, right? When we wake up tomorrow morning. It won't be 26 inches, but maybe something like a foot to 16 inches. What about our friends far to the north here? Let's say we were to go up to Chazy. And correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but let's go up here near the Canada border. And we're seeing negative, no, that's actually 5 degrees, a wind chill of -5, and only about 2 inches of snow on the ground. So we're seeing here that not necessarily moving north would actually give you more snowfall. We're seeing that, again, that proximity to the Great Lakes makes a huge difference, of course. But yeah, being here next to the Canadian border, there's, again, only about 2 inches of snow on the ground here from previous storms. One thing that would be cool, and again, I think New York Mesonet does this, is I think they actually provide the radar here. So we can take a look at what's actually happening in the storm. Let's remove everything else. I don't think we'll have any lightning or alerts that are really important here for now. But we can also do temperature and show the radar here for the moment. I hope this actually shows up for us. There we go. There we go. So this is really good. This is showing the temperature over New York State, and it's also showing the actual snowfall. And this is the snowfall rate. So where you go from lighter blue up here in the far upstate New York, there's probably no snow reaching the ground. This is such a dry, high pressure system that's in place currently that nothing here north of the Adirondacks is probably reaching the ground. But south of the Adirondacks, right, let's say you get to a place like Glens Falls, light to moderate snowfall has probably reached you guys. Now, further to the south, we can see here over the southern Adirondacks, down into the Catskills, and towards New York City. Again, moderate to heavy snowfall. And some of the heavier bands here near Coldbrook is probably in response to orographic lifting. I'd imagine near Coldbrook, there must be some elevation gain, possibly in that area. Another thing that could happen is that sometimes you get convergence of winds off the lake that kind of energize the storm itself. So coming off of Lake Ontario, there might be some enhancement downstream into that area. So there's so many different factors that can work into snowfall and generate the heavier bands of snowfall. Looks like here, north and west of the Catskills, near Lawrence, Brookfield, Springfield, Sherburne. Looks like you guys have some moderate to heavy snowfall there as well. Just a moment. I'm going to get something to drink real quick. But yeah, throughout New York State here, especially in the eastern part of the state, northeastern part of the state, single digits still. We have teens as you get into the western part of New York State. But in general, you can kind of see here on the map the moderate to heavy snowfall in green. And this extends right into eastern Pennsylvania, much of New England here. You can kind of imagine it. And then the really deep greens here, don't let that fool you like, oh, that's the heaviest precipitation in the storm. More than likely, it's high reflectivity from sleet. So if you get down south of Staten Island, again, Staten Island might see a quick change over to sleet here. When I see these darker greens, especially down this far south here, this is probably associated with some high reflectivity. So maybe a change over to sleet could occur earlier than that 5 p.m. we were talking about. So let's see if we can find something else here. Again, we kind of get a general idea of what's happening in New York State. Some places right in the Tuckhill Plateau have 2 feet of snow already on the ground. Let's take a look at another area that's generally sees a lot of snowfall. Medusa is one of them, but let's go to Tannersville. This is right in the center of the Catskills. That's how much snowfall we have there on the ground. Again, it's not high up in the mountains, right? We're not talking about 4,000 feet. We're talking about maybe 2,300 feet. And a lot of this snowfall, again, I think is new, probably. It's fallen. We've probably seen about, I'd imagine, 4 to 5 inches already from previous snows. And then we've gotten probably 5 inches on top of that so far in Tannersville. But yeah, this is a place, again, I would expect to see a little bit more staying from previous storms. But yeah, it looks like it's less than I expected. But I would say in general, we've probably seen a good 5 inches of additional snowfall in Tannersville. And there'll definitely be more to come, though. This is a place I would definitely expect to see over the 1 foot mark, approaching the 2 foot mark probably by the end of the storm. But yeah, this is up in a beautiful location as you're going towards the mountains there in the Catskills. It's a really pretty region. Let's see. So we've gone over Buffalo. What about a place like Syracuse? Let's see if we can get to. Again, they probably just have the locations around Syracuse here, unfortunately. But again, I think we'll leave it at that for New York State for now. We can see in general that south of the Adirondacks, we have a good snowstorm. And that moderate to heavy snowfall will likely lead to a foot, right, by the time we get to Monday morning. And where it's most likely is going to probably be between Albany and places just north of New York City. All right, so I'm going to make the screen go black for a moment. I think this is what's happening. I hit the stop share, and this will allow me to go to a different screen. When I try to share the entire screen, uh, what ends up happening is that I have all these windows pop up, and it looks like it looks into eternity. I'll see like 100 different like frames come up on the screen. So I try to avoid that for that reason. But before I transition, let me take a look at chat and see if we have anything in addition here that's happening. Okay. Yeah, nothing in addition from what I can see. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a look at the latest radar. So what we can do is maybe go to NOAA. And I'm going to pull that up here. I'm going to leave this on the screen for now. And in fact, what I can do, let's do this for a moment. I'm going to leave up a pretty shot here. Maybe of that pretty church again, right? Over the Bronx. That was really pretty. So I'm going to leave that up for a moment as I'm looking for something else. I'm going to go to the National Weather Service here for a really good radar here. Let's see. Okay, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and say stop share here. I'm going to go back to a different screen now. And what I want to kind of pick up on is where the sleet could actually be in the storm. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. Okay, so we're back. What I've done is I've pulled up the local radar for New York City, and this shows pretty much from Allentown, Pennsylvania to New York City, this very heavy band of precipitation. So the problem with this is that we don't know if this is heavy snow or this is the beginning of sleet, right, in this particular area. We'd have to actually kind of dive into this to know for certain. Either with the correlation coefficient, which is probably the most effective radar to use, or we could look at the local radar itself for a very high reflectivity. Now, this area here, or this particular high resolution model, let's see if I can kind of go back here for a moment to maybe this model. There we go. I think for the high resolution model, it does a really good job at showing the precipitation rates here and how heavy the precipitation can actually be. And we can kind of see here that we have the darker greens over much of New York City, Long Island, northward into Yonkers. But we also have it westward into Allentown, Pennsylvania. What would be, I think, more effective here is to take a look at the local radar here. Let's see if we can kind of back up for a moment. Here we go. So what could be concerning for people that do love snowfall here is that when you see these yellows move into the area, that could be the reflection of sleet on the radar. So you can see this latest band moving up from the south. This could actually have some sleet start mixing into New York City sooner than later. and that could really cut down on snowfall amounts in that area. Areas to the north here where we see banding occur, so you can see the darker greens here in Middleton, Peaksville, up to Bridgeport. These heavier bands are likely delivering anywhere from a half an inch to an inch of snow an hour in those areas, maybe a little bit heavier. If this indeed was true over New York City, where we're seeing the yellow on the map, we'd probably see upwards of 1 to 2 inches an hour snowfall rates, maybe heavier. But I have a sneaking suspicion with the storm, just because of that warm nose of air we're seeing coming up from the south, that we're likely seeing sleet starting to mix in, especially over central portions of New Jersey. Okay, so I think since we're here, let's take advantage of having the high resolution model, or high resolution radar, rather. And I want to kind of scoot to the south here over Dover, Delaware. One thing we're seeing is that the likelihood of this heavier precipitation moving northward and there being an abundance of it is evidently clear. We can see from Trenton to Philadelphia down to Washington, D.C., this heavier precipitation that's continuing to move northward. Let's kind of put this in motion here to see it. Yeah, we can see where it's kind of hitting to the north and east. And one thing that's not going to be apparent is that once you get outside of this circle, it doesn't do a good job at picking up on precipitation from other radars. It's very hard for it to do that. So what we do in this case is we go to a national radar that would include all of them and kind of blend them all together. But for our intents and purposes, we're trying to get an idea of where sleet could be mixing in. I'm always concerned when I see really high reflectivity, like we're seeing in Philadelphia here, these brighter yellows on the screen going up towards Trenton. That could be some sleet mixing in. And it's not like it's going to make the roadways even worse necessarily, but it will really start to cut down on snowfall totals, especially for people that were wanting that foot of snow, right, from DC, Baltimore, all up the I-95 corridor, right? But yeah, I think locations to the north and west, what I'm noticing is that basically from Harrisburg to Allentown, that's not necessarily going to be an issue. So let's go a little bit further to the south. We'll take a look at Washington. And once again, we're seeing where this transition zone probably is occurring in southern Pennsylvania. I'd be surprised if precipitation rates are really that heavy in that part of the state. All indications are that Virginia has changed over in most locations to sleet. And if not, this can be changing to freezing rain, probably within the next hour or two. So yeah, I would expect locations maybe from the border here between Pennsylvania and Maryland points south have likely changed over to all sleet at this point. Let's go further still to State College. This does an excellent job. My goodness, this does an excellent job at showing the boundary between the snow and the sleet. State College is so well protected because there's so many chains of mountains here. If you were to look at the state of Pennsylvania on a topographic map, it does a great job at illustrating each individual ridge that runs through the state. And I think what we're seeing here is that transition from moderate and heavy snowfall over State College and down into, let's say, places like Harrisburg and even maybe towards Allentown, this transition zone between snow and sleet. I do not think that this snowfall that we're seeing, these heavy amounts, right, of snowfall over Harrisburg are actually snow. I think it's more the high reflectivity from sleet there. So if you're driving along I-76 eastward towards, let's say, Allentown, that area, again, I think you hop on 81 actually in this area. If you're coming up from the south through Harrisburg and eventually into Allentown, that area on 78 east, I think that could be sleet now. So this transition could be occurring a lot sooner than what the models are showing. But it looks like State College, again, all snow there. Altoona, all snow there as of about 2 p.m. And then Scranton, Pennsylvania, probably all snow there as well. So we can start to see a line. You can kind of imagine here along I-76, reaching up into Allentown. There's probably a transition zone from snow to sleet there. Another area we can take a look at, I think, would be near Providence in Boston, that area. How's this area doing? Now, another telltale sign is that this is moderate to heavy snowfall over Boston even. And you can see the banding. And what I mean by banding is we're seeing these darker greens move over the city of Boston and Providence. And this is probably those 1 to 2 inch snowfall rates that your local meteorologist is talking about. And that's moving over your area right now, and that will continue through this evening and likely overnight. So it's going to really start to rack up snow amounts in this area. Another thing, too, we're noticing is that in this particular radar image, none of that high reflectivity, none of those yellows are showing up yet in Boston. Is it completely out of the picture here in Providence? No, I think you could see a change over to sleet eventually, especially towards this evening. Hartford, same thing. You could see some change over to that sleet precipitation type. But I think Boston, again, I would assume, according to model data, should stay all snow for the entirety of the event. And then, again, kind of to wrap things back up, let's look at Albany for a moment. Much the same thing, right? We're seeing, the heavier snows and the darker greens indicating the heavier bands of snow, but none of those yellows that we were seeing over New York City. So I think we're getting an idea of where the ice is, right? Where the sleet is setting up over the Northeast. But I think in general, we're seeing the snow stay in place over upstate New York, probably much of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. I haven't taken a look at Maine yet, but let's take a quick look up here. It looks like for a place like Portland, it's going to be much later, right? To kind of get that precipitation and kind of moisten up the atmosphere, right? It's going to probably take a couple of more hours there in Portland for snow to actually start to begin and fall. I would assume over Concord, New Hampshire, snow is falling there and points to the south. But one thing that is going to be for certain is Concord, probably to Portland, that's going to stay all snow as well. Okay, so let's kind of go a little bit further south still into Pittsburgh. Get an idea if we see any snow and sleet mixing in Pittsburgh. So if I were to zoom into that area, hopefully we can get this to show up on the western part of town here in Pittsburgh. There we go. So for Pittsburgh itself, we're getting moderate to heavy snowfall, again, through about 2 p.m. It looks like there could be some mixing of sleet down towards Morgantown, West Virginia, which makes sense, right? Morgantown had that warm nose of air, right, move into the state. So places like Morgantown will probably see a period of freezing rain, right, that far to the south. And then also we're seeing where sleet is mixing in, again, along the border there of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, along the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland even, right, towards Cumberland. It looks like there is mixing of sleet into that precipitation. But for Pittsburgh itself, it looks like you guys are going to stay all snow. So we're getting a general idea now of where the snow is going to be. It looks like Pittsburgh is pretty safe. I would imagine near Scranton, that's pretty safe at the moment. Yeah, looks like you guys are going to stay all snow as well, up to Albany. So there's kind of like this trend of snow, right, north and east with the storm. And there's certain areas that are kind of going to be all snow, right, on the colder side of that system. But locations along I-95, and this is often the case, places like Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, less so over Hartford and Boston, but I would say through New York City, maybe just south of Hartford, that whole area is going to probably see a transition to sleet there, and that's going to really cut down on totals. But anywhere to the north and west of that line, as you travel north and west of that line, the more likely you're going to see just all snow. So, yeah, State College, Pittsburgh, Scranton, and Pennsylvania, no question you guys could see a foot of snow easily, maybe upwards of 14, 16 inches. Binghamton, New York to Albany, I'd say that's another area that's likely to see at least 14 to 16 inches of snow. And then as we get into Boston itself, it looks to me like that's some of the heaviest precipitation now on the radar. So again, if you're getting 1.5, 2 inches of snow an hour, which you very well could be getting, it's going to really pile up fast here. And you've got snowfall through midnight. So you could see 20 inches, maybe as much as 2 feet of snow in Boston. So this will go down the record books as one of the largest snows, right, to affect the Northeast, especially around the Boston area. All right, so let's take a look down here in Richmond for a moment. And what we're seeing also in the mid-Atlantic is that it's more broken, the precipitation. So we are seeing these bands of heavier amounts move through Richmond and over central Virginia. What's going to likely happen too is that sleet's going to begin to transition from ice pellets to just plain old rain in eastern parts of the state. Norfolk probably is above freezing now, and those temperatures are trending up as you move inland. So it could be in the 20s, right, over Richmond still, and points to the west. But those temperatures will rise with time, and so will your chances of going from sleet to freezing rain. And we can see some heavier bands of sleet moving through Lynchburg currently. Again, this is between 1 and 2 p.m. Let's kind of back up because this image does not look right. So between basically Roanoke, what you're seeing here at Cave Spring, that's near Roanoke, moving west to east here through places like Buckingham, along 460 here to the east. All that area receiving lighter to possibly even heavier bands of sleet here at this time. And it looks like along the Shenandoah Valley, it looks like the area that's receiving probably the heaviest amounts of sleet consistently in that area. So it's probably really piling up there. And in this latest frame, look at Blacksburg. Now we're seeing this dry slot move into Southwest Virginia. Again, it's probably further north than anyone expected this dry slot to move into, but you could get a brief period of time where there's a break in precipitation from west to east here throughout much of central Virginia. It looks like we do have a backside here to the precipitation. Let's take a look at this area of Kentucky for a moment. Hopefully we can get a good idea of what's happening here in Kentucky. Yeah, so again, our next batch of precipitation is now beginning to move into the Tri-City area of Virginia. So Virginia, Tennessee, and, well, I should just say Virginia and Tennessee. It's not the Tri-City area, but near Bristol. And we can see where our next band of heavy precipitation is beginning to move from west to east. There's going to be a break, though. There could be a break of a couple of hours over places like Blacksburg and Roanoke, where there's no precipitation, or at least going from moderate and heavy precipitation to just like a mist or a freezing drizzle, something like that. So again, still dangerous travel conditions, and getting a glaze of ice on top of what you've gotten is not a good thing. But we could see something like that through, let's say, the rest of the afternoon over places like Blacksburg and Roanoke, where precipitation is now much lighter than what we saw before. So if we take a look at Knoxville, again, this is likely all rain in this area. Let's see if it'll let me zoom in further. No, we'll have to zoom out, I guess, guys. So yeah, over Knoxville, Tennessee, this is likely all rain that's falling here, and it's moderate to heavy rain. This is not sleet that's mixing in anymore. So the high reflectivity does resemble heavy rain in this area. And still further to the west here over Nashville, we're seeing the backside of the precipitation now move into Nashville. And this is likely falling as sleet or snow now over the city. And behind it here, the scattered precipitation that you're seeing to the west is likely light snow showers that are moving into the area. So places like Kentucky, Nashville, could see some lighter snow this evening. Won't add up to much, right, in comparison to what you've already seen. But again, you can see where this backside of the last band really of precipitation is moving through Nashville currently. Let's go points to the south here towards Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia. You can see where the backside of the precipitation is in Alabama. So again, it's kind of moving through the western part of the state now. Heaviest precipitations moving through places like Atlanta. Now let's move further to the south here. This is getting, for lack of a better word here, this is getting kind of dangerous for places south and west of Montgomery. Let's see if we can kind of get a better look at this radar. Let's see if we can get a better look, guys. This is an area where we're seeing severe weather currently. We'll have to zoom out, I guess, then. Here we go. Zoom in a little bit. Unfortunately, we're not able to pick up on it. But you can see all the severe thunderstorm warnings in southern Alabama towards, let's say, the panhandle of Florida. You can see these severe thunderstorm warnings popping up on the screen. And for whatever reason, it's hard to pick up in this radar. So what I'm going to do now, go back to chat for a moment. Okay, thank you, C. Newton, for the update. So maybe 2 inches now in Albany since 9 a.m. Okay. Yeah. I'd imagine that it's going to get heavier from this point forward for people in Albany. I could see us picking up somewhere between 2 and 4 inches between now and 6 p.m. pretty easily. That could be something where we're able to pick up really heavy snow between now and 6 p.m. I could see us picking up anywhere between that and, I don't know, that might put us at maybe 6 inches in Albany by the time we get to 6 p.m. Now, let's switch to a different radar source. This one's giving us a lot of trouble as we get into the Florida Panhandle. So I'm going to exit out of this briefly and take us to a different radar. All right, guys, so hopefully you can see this radar over southern Alabama, but this is a strong line of storms that's moving from, let's say, near Pensacola, north and eastward through Columbus. So Columbus, Georgia here. Again, we can see temperatures in the 50s in Columbus, Georgia, and just to the south of that, of course, getting into the 70s in southeastern Alabama. And this is convective rainfall. So this is a lot of moisture that's working into the system. Again, probably colliding with cold air aloft. And again, we probably have wind shear, strong wind shear here as we get into the Gulf states here. And as a result, we're seeing severe weather this afternoon. And maybe we can pull that up here on this particular radar. I'm hoping we can. Let's see. Let's get rid of marine, flood, winter weather, other, tropical. All right. Now we can zoom in and we can see this area here marked in red. Each one of these red boxes actually over southwestern Alabama, or rather southeastern Alabama into Georgia. Each one of these red boxes represents a tornado watch. So we actually have the potential for tornadoes even this afternoon. So this storm has it all, as many have said. Um, but over Tallahassee in Florida right now, there is a severe thunderstorm warning. Um, as we move up northward into, let's see if we can get a better view here of each place. Yeah, so there's just severe thunderstorm warnings around Tallahassee in Florida. And it's not letting me click in on these areas. Again, it might just be due to the available memory in my computer currently. But yeah, we can see the story here. We can see that there are strong storms over southern Alabama, southern Georgia, panhandle of Florida. And you can kind of imagine where this is going. It's moving points to the east and probably to the south. So if you're in places like Panama City, Tallahassee, again, Tallahassee doesn't really have a severe thunderstorm warning yet, but the severe storms are hitting in your direction. And maybe as far east as Jacksonville. I have a feeling that much of this will die down before reaching you in Gainesville and Jacksonville, but it is hitting in your direction. And you'll at least have gusty winds and probably some heavy rain as you get into this evening and later tonight. And for people up in Atlanta, let's go ahead and take a quick look at what's currently happening in Atlanta. Look at this change here between the western side of town and the eastern side of town. We can see on the western side of town, it's in the middle 30s, even some 40s, right, as you go south and west. And then on the eastern side of town, it's in the lower 30s, right? So places like Stonecrest up to Lawrenceville, especially as you get into Lawrenceville, it's temperatures in the upper 20s. So likely all freezing rain by the time this precipitation, this band moves into that area. Athens, Georgia, another location that will probably see all freezing rain. Gainesville. There could be a changeover to rain, though, at the very end in this location, but likely the majority of it will be freezing rain. I do believe as you get into the Piedmont of, let's say, South Carolina here, where you see temperatures in the middle 20s, and you see the middle 20s even up here into parts of North Carolina. Temperatures are beginning to warm, by the way, but it should be cold enough to provide. Sorry, guys, I just got an update from someone that this is not showing up for whatever reason. But there seems to be a delay. Once again, hopefully you can hear my voice at least there, that there is a delay between switching these frames on my screen. So I think that's what you're witnessing. All right, so that being said, another area that would be kind of cool to take a look at here is near Asheville, North Carolina. We can see on the western side of Asheville, again, we can see some temperatures here in the lower 30s. Also some precipitation changing from rain to freezing rain in this area here. Heavier rains, of course, as you move westward into Waynesville. You can see temperatures here in the lower 50s in that area. But yeah, there's this battle between the warm air and the cold air right in this region over Asheville. I happen to think that all of this area will probably warm into the 40s very shortly, and we'll see a transition to just all rain, even in the deeper valleys here around Asheville. Now you get down the eastern escarpment of the Blue Ridge, and all of a sudden you can see that cold dome of air locked in place. So if you get down to places like Morganton, I think this is Morganton, yeah, it's going to likely stay in the mid-20s. Also off to the east of that, you can see where you have the deepest layer of cold air over High Point in Greensboro, in the teens there still, even as of 2 p.m. Winston-Salem, again, about 20 degrees there. And then further to the north, we can see temperatures still hovering in the teens or lower 20s through much of the state of Virginia. I would think that the warm air is going to really struggle to overpower this region. I do believe that we'll see a transition from sleet to freezing rain when that heavy band does finally move in. All right, let's put this in motion, guys. Let's take a look at what we've got here. I'm going to remove the warnings here off to the south. So let's go ahead and remove that for a moment if we can. It's all the severe weather. I'm going to zoom out well enough so we can see all this activity moving from west to east. Of course, you can see the thunderstorm activity to the south over Alabama and Georgia, the freezing rain activity just to the east of town in Atlanta. And you can see the rain, this massive band of rain beginning to move over the Appalachian Mountains in the Carolinas. And we do believe that the Carolinas, especially the Piedmont of North Carolina, will likely stay all freezing rain as that band moves over the mountains. The sleet we're experiencing over the state of Virginia, again, even though it's showing pink and blue, the blue is still sleet. It's not snow that's falling here. And once that band of heavy rain moves into the region, we'll probably see that transition from sleet to freezing rain. Again, as we get towards the evening hours, so around 5, 6 o'clock, we can start seeing a transition there. Just kind of imagine that this band has more warm air advecting over top of it than what we were seeing with the precipitation before. So temperatures will rise a bit in central Virginia. And just to give you some context here, we can see freezing rain even in the upper teens. We've had reports in Texas, Mississippi, places like that where temperatures are really cold, but we still saw freezing rain at the surface. So when this warm nose of air does move in, things will likely change at that time. Now back to the north and west over portions of Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois. You can see where the precipitation is really starting to break up a bit. So a lot of that's becoming lighter with time. And you don't really get into the heavy precipitation once again until you get into the state of Ohio. And again, probably all snow from Columbus to Pittsburgh. Heavy snow indeed, right? North of Harrisburg, north of Allentown. So we're talking about Williamsport, Scranton. Places to the south are likely seeing a mix of sleet, at least into the precipitation. Again, probably seeing a mix with sleet in New York City now. I'd be surprised if it's not. Once you get up to, let's say, like Kingston, New York, eastward into Hartford, Providence, all locations north and especially north and west of that, that line there are probably seeing all snow. Locations that will probably stay snow through the event. Again, we're looking at maybe Pittsburgh to Williamsport to Scranton. I'd be surprised if Scranton does switch over. I think it will be all snow for this event. Albany, I think it will be all snow for this event. And of course, Boston, I think will stay all snow for this event. Again, a general 14, 16 inches of snowfall, maybe more as you get eastward into Boston area. I think 20 inches is not out of the question there. Upwards of 2 feet if those heavy bands stay in place. But yeah, that's the latest on the radar. Again, wherever you're seeing pink here in the state of Virginia, a lot of that's probably sleet still. But just keep in mind that there's a warm nose of air associated with this band of green, right? This band of rain that we're seeing over Kentucky and West Virginia. That will likely finally shift portions of central Virginia over to all freezing rain. And that'll probably be the most damaging part of the storm for you guys. And hopefully we're not picking up, once that band moves over, more than a half an inch of freezing rain, because that's when we're going to really start to accumulate on the trees, on the power lines, all of that. North Carolina, South Carolina, you've probably been receiving light freezing rain all day. I think a lot of it's not picking up on the radar, but I would assume from Columbia, South Carolina, northward into Greensboro, it's probably been light freezing drizzle all day, I would imagine. And these times where you have like a lighter band move over, you might get a little bit more accumulation, but it's very efficient at accumulating when you have these lighter bands and a freezing mist that's going on. Currently, as of about 2:20, again, we're seeing the freezing rain, the heavier band move into Gainesville, Georgia. It looks like Atlanta's pretty much saved here. It looks like the warmer air is moving in with it. So I would be surprised if central and western portions of town are dealing with freezing rain anymore. I think the warmer air is going to move in with this band. But yeah, if you live in Athens, Georgia, I think you guys are going to get probably a couple of hours at least of freezing rain. Greensville, South Carolina, I could see you getting a long duration period of freezing rain, several hours, as we get into the evening. Charlotte, same thing. Greensboro, same thing. And perhaps as far east as Raleigh, it stays all freezing rain. What we will notice is that the warm air kind of does this squeeze from west to east. So the high mountains of North Carolina around Asheville are going to change all over to rain. It's just going to be too warm at that level in the atmosphere. Same thing is true along the coast there. So if you get towards Fayetteville, perhaps up to Smithfield, Wilson, back towards Greenville and North Carolina. Again, we're talking about maybe 587 here, moving out towards Greenville, North Carolina. I could see that entire area changing over to rain as the warm air from the Atlantic begins to move in on shore. But yeah, these interior areas of the state of North Carolina, Raleigh to Chapel Hill, Durham. You can see Wake Forest here on the map. You kind of think about all the schools down there in that district. And yeah, I think that entire area will probably stay all freezing rain for the event. I'd be surprised if they don't. Same thing for Winston-Salem and Greensboro, down to High Point. I could see you guys staying all freezing rain with this. Those areas have been seeing sleet as well. Up to this point, I do want to mention that. But yeah, I think when this band moves in, you're going to see that change over definitely into freezing rain. Now, as far as areas that have changed over to rain in, let's say, West Virginia, again, Charleston, right on the border there, right, of going from rain to freezing rain. Locations up near, let's say, West Virginia University and Morgantown. It looks like you guys had a change over to maybe sleet and freezing rain there, but it looks like you stayed safe from the warm nose in terms of changing over to rain. May not be happy about that. It just depends. But I think over here towards central portions of West Virginia, we might have seen all rain, that change over there. And then some areas are kind of more protected than others. Around Beckley, West Virginia, we can see temperatures here in the mid-20s. A lot of that has to do with you get behind these higher ranges of mountains, and that cold air gets trapped better. So I think Beckley is a place like that, especially Lewisburg. You got many chains of mountains you have to get through to get to that city. And then especially as you get into Virginia, there's so many successive ridges you have to get past to get to that cold air and actually push it out. But I hope you're getting a general idea of where the cold air will remain. I think anywhere from Blacksburg eastward into Roanoke, Lynchburg, perhaps as far east as Richmond and points to the north. You're going to likely see all frozen precipitation through the duration of the event. All right, so what I want to do now is take a look at the live chat and see if we have anything. And I just want to remind people to, if you enjoy this video or enjoy the stream, just to please subscribe or like. This is something that will really help this channel and and hopefully it will come up on your screen the next time you're on YouTube. Oh, he's doing a live stream, or that's something I'd like to check out. Well, uh, the more people that do that, the more likely it will be to show up in your feed and other people's feed. So that would be a big help to this channel. One thing we might do later is some weather trivia, because what we've done so far, we've really gone through the storm itself. We've taken a look at the radar images. We've talked about where snow is transitioning to sleet, right? And where we're seeing rain in the system and severe storms down to the south. So we've taken a look at the system in some great detail. So I think later at some point, maybe in the next 30 minutes, we might do some weather trivia. So we'll see about that coming up. I did get a report from Central Virginia that's still sleeting currently. So I imagine that you guys in Central Virginia have seen probably at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 inches of sleet and snow mixed in. So yeah, I appreciate that report. Anyone else that's watching, of course, leave a report of your snowfall, your ice that you've seen in your area. One thing I want to check too is my Twitter account. I'll let you know if there's any updates there in terms of images or video. It doesn't look like it for now, so we'll probably just focus on the chat for now, see if there's any questions. One thing I see in the chat, and I've gotten reports from people about, is that this screen does still show up black sometimes. Again, it might just be my algorithm. It might be the back end of YouTube. I'm not sure what is creating that. But whenever I do change images, I know it's happening. So if I go from a radar image to a camera image, you might see that happen for a period of time. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I think, you know, for the trivia portion of this video, if you wanted to post questions yourself, if you had questions about what you've either heard in the video, or let's say you want to bring up something that you've heard weather-wise and would like to discuss it, that's something I'd be willing to do as well. Okay, so I think the next thing I want to do is take a look out at Tennessee. I think that's a good state to take a look at and see if there's been a change in terms of the precipitation itself, and see if we actually have the precipitation really lighting up in Nashville. It could be at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop share on this screen. So we'll probably go black again for a few moments, and then I'll bring up that next image. Okay, guys, so hopefully you can see this. There might be some delay in the screen footage here, but what I'm trying to show you now is this traffic cam in western part of Nashville in Tennessee. You can see where the precipitation has now basically come to a stop, and we can see where the ice is accumulated on the camera itself. But we're also seeing where travelers are out and about, right? You got people walking on the bridge, you got people driving around, and it looks, I don't want to say safe at the moment, but it looks like there's a lot of people out traveling, and they're going a decent speed. I think the next thing we're going to see here that could be a problem is a flash freeze. This is something you probably heard from your local newscaster recently, but even after a period of rainfall, so it seems like there's been some melting, right, as that heavy rain moved through the city. there's going to be a lot of cold air that rushes in behind the system. So wherever you see water on the road, you can kind of make it out here when people are driving by, like that last car. There's a lot of water that's being kicked out the back, right? Those back wheels. You're going to see a flash freeze here, first on the bridges, just because of the cold air that is easily able to, I guess, freeze that pavement more than, let's say, near the ground. Again, the reason is that the pavement that's on the ground, right, receives the heat from the earth itself. You don't get that from a bridge. So the bridge is going to freeze over much quicker. So where you're seeing this car now at the top of the bridge driving over, that's going to freeze back the quickest. And then you're going to see the roadways get dangerous probably around midnight tonight as that really cold air in the teens and eventually the single digits begins to move into Nashville overnight. How far east of Nashville do we have to go before we see less snow, less sleet, and perhaps just rain? You can see here on I-40 as we're traveling east, there's still a good deal of sleet that's piled up on the side of the road here. Again, there's probably a transition to rain here at the end as that precipitation band moved out of the area. But yeah, we can see where people are still traveling there. We can see some vehicles still passing through the area. Yeah, looks like they're moving at a normal speed even on the highway. I was just alerted again that my screen has gone black for some of you. So I'm sorry about that, but again, this is something that will probably show up soon, hopefully. But further still to the east, let's kind of move towards, let's say, the Knoxville area. Let's see if we have any snow and sleet that survived the rain that moved through the area. Might have to go back a little bit. Yeah, we can kind of see here. Oh, this is still Nashville. Let me go back. Yeah, let's go near Knoxville for a moment. Let's see if we have any cameras that are working here. There's 131 available cameras, but for whatever reason, here we go. You guys can hopefully get a general view of what's happened here in Knoxville. It looks like an all-rain event, right? In the sense that all the snow and sleet that you did see yesterday has melted and has been washed away by the rainfall today. And let's just kind of click on one of these to get an idea of how fast travel is moving in this particular area. Again, it looks like people are moving at a normal speed. The big concern, again, is going to be the freeze up, right? The cold air is going to rush in later this evening. And wherever you see water on the road, it has the potential to refreeze and become black ice. And that's going to be an issue as you get in tomorrow morning. So anyone traveling, let's say on Monday morning, might have to deal with that. One good thing that the state of Tennessee is doing, I'm sure other states are doing, according to the state of emergency, is just providing shelter for everyone. So I'm looking at the Tennessee Department of Transportation here. And one thing they have as far as a tab that you can click on is to find a shelter near you. So if anyone happens to be watching this, you could go to the Department of Transportation, probably in any state where there is a state of emergency, and you can probably find a way to get to a shelter. And it might be one of those cases where you're in an ice storm and you have to call someone. But you can see where we have different options here of finding out that information. So I'm sorry, guys, if no one's actually seen my screen here recently. Apparently, there's been other issues. When I look at my screen now, my shared screen, it's showing me, it's showing my background image from my tab that I've pulled up. So I'm not quite sure what's happening. So unfortunately, I hate that for you guys. They're not able to see. But what I currently have pulled up is these different traffic cams in Tennessee, and we're seeing Knoxville is basically clear. There's been no additional snow and sleet this afternoon. In fact, the rain has washed it away. Okay, so I think we're back live again. Let me do this for a moment. I'm going to go back and kind of share with you what's happening in Knoxville, Tennessee. These are all these images around town, and you can see where basically across the board there's been no sleet and snow today. All the rain has come in and washed it away with this latest band of precipitation. Temperatures got into the mid to upper 30s in the region. And if I were to take a look at one such roadway here outside of Knoxville, you can see, yeah, it looks like people are having no problems at all driving around. It looks normal speed in this particular area for most drivers. And it is safe for now, but I would say as we get to any time frame after dark, there's going to be cold air rushing into the area throughout Tennessee. And again, we're going to see temperatures in the teens dropping into the single digits in some areas here. So a flash freeze is possible even in Knoxville. And any water that you're seeing here on the roadway could refreeze easily. So just keep that in mind if you're traveling, especially late tonight, early tomorrow morning. I think that would be the dangerous time for anyone traveling in Knoxville, Tennessee. All right, guys. So what I want to do is find some other traffic cameras for you. So hopefully I'm going to just stay on this one screen and not actually have you guys see a blank screen this time. So I'm going to try to find something using what I have here currently, and hopefully won't run into issues this time. So let's go to perhaps, how about Connecticut this time? We'll take a look at Connecticut traffic cams. And you can see in general, just the whiteout conditions in Connecticut, heavy snow right throughout the state. And this is kind of a wild image here. We can see, it's not in motion or anything, but we can see likely a traffic accident here. This is East Hartford Route 2 westbound, and this is exit 4 on Willow Street. Again, whiteout conditions here, very dangerous travel conditions here in Hartford, Connecticut. Again, Hartford could see a changeover to sleet, but they could also see 8 to 10 inches of snow before that happens. And even when the sleet comes in, it's still going to be dangerous for a lot of people. Let's see if we can look at another area here. I think a bridge or overpass is always interesting to look at. This is Waterbury, I-84, and this is, again, in part of Connecticut, what we're seeing here. One of the bridges is completely covered in snow, basically whiteout conditions in the area. Yeah, this is going to probably be the case through much of the evening here in Connecticut. And if we do see a changeover, it's going to be a changeover to sleet. And that will probably occur after dark there in Connecticut. Now this is a look at 113. I guess this cam 113. So as far as the address, we have East Hartford Route 2 westbound, exit 3, maybe the East River. So this is traveling west from East Hartford, Connecticut. Again, almost whiteout conditions there. You can see where the bridge is completely covered in snowfall. But you can see here all the way through Connecticut, the cameras that are provided. If I were to go to the next page here, probably the same thing, right? All of Connecticut is completely covered in a heavy snowstorm. I was trying to understand this image. So if I have any viewers in Connecticut that can make sense of this, why do we see what appears to be like a straight highway here? There's something running down the middle, and maybe someone who is familiar with this area, that would be something interesting to put in the chat, like what's actually happening here on the road. I can't figure it out. But this is US 7 along the median, maybe southbound, exit 1 and Connecticut Avenue. So you can see whiteout conditions here. But that's what we were seeing on the radar earlier, right? At 2 p.m., we were seeing heavy bands of snow moving into Connecticut. This totally makes sense, what we're seeing. All right, so those are the conditions in Connecticut. What about Rhode Island? Again, it should be the same thing, right? Shouldn't be any different. So hopefully you guys can see all of this. But again, every road here that I see is covered in snow. And this is found by just doing a simple Google search. You can look at all of these. Oh, this is a beautiful picture. We can actually see the heavy snow and these larger snowflakes coming down. Yeah, this is a beautiful shot. Let me see, did they actually tell us what road this is? So this is on Garden Street. I imagine because Rhode Island is so small that all of these locations are very close to Providence. I could be wrong, but yeah, we can see two bridges here completely covered in snow. You can see just underneath it even, right? You can see the snow getting underneath as well and covering the roads. So dangerous travel conditions. Again, people here look like they're used to it. And they're still out in it, perhaps still doing some work on Sunday afternoon. But yeah, a beautiful, beautiful setting here. I just love seeing the snowflakes. A lot of these videos, I can't make them out. So this is a really pretty image to me. Huh. Let's take a look at this. It looks like we might have quite a bit of traffic here. Again, visibility is very low here, most likely near Providence. Let's check out the street. That way anyone can correct me in chat here. I'm totally open to correction, guys, if you live in Providence. So the 610 interchange. Again, I'm not familiar with the area. I think it's fun for us to go through and actually check out these traffic cams and see what's actually happening. Another thing I'm going to go ahead and do, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and close out my other tabs. I think that could be creating an issue. So these other traffic cams I'm going to exit out of. I think that's creating maybe some issues in the background. But I don't know about you guys. What I'll do sometimes during a winter storm that I'm not experiencing, I'll oftentimes, especially if my family's getting a snow in the South, and they live in Virginia, so I'll constantly ask them, okay, how much snow did you get? What's it doing now? Has it changed to ice? Is it still snow and ice, or has it changed to rain? I always want to know the details of what's going on down there. What I can do is I can pull up the traffic cams and get a glimpse at what people are experiencing. And yeah, it's fun to go from state to state to see what everybody's getting. And What I hope to do at some point is have people involved enough where, and hopefully I can keep up with it, but have people involved enough where I can see what they're getting at home, through images, video, or just people posting the amounts of snow they're getting. But I would love to see what people are getting across each state. I think that'd be really fun to do. Now, I just lost that video stream for whatever reason that I clicked on. Maybe I can click on a different one. Let's go near exit 39. And wow, is that beautiful. You can see here, I guess on the east bank of this road, how heavy the snow is in this part of the state. And the trees give you a good idea of it here. But yeah, these giant snowflakes coming down, really piling up on the roadways. But people are still out in it. And I imagine for people that love snow, I had family members that loved snow growing up. They would always drive out in it because they just enjoyed it so much. So I don't know how much it is of that on the roadway where people just want to get out in it and enjoy it, or people just have to work regardless. And that could be very much the case here. But yeah, for anyone out there, just please take your time, enjoy it. But most of all, protect your life. So if we have anywhere else we can look at here. Smithfield. Let's take a look at that one if we can. All right, so that was good timing. We can actually see a snowplow moving through the area. Gosh, you can barely see here. I know the camera's kind of freezing up and it looks like it's got ice on it even. But this is an absolute beautiful shot of what is taking place there. And it's piling up so quickly. I saw a couple of vehicles go by on the opposite lane, and it's actually kicking up snow. That gives you an idea. The plows are not able to keep up at this moment. So this is a dangerous time, very dangerous time in Providence to be traveling. And again, I know these guys are used to it that live out here, and they're probably very confident driving in it. But yeah, unless you have work, I guess if you really loved it and wanted to be out in it, I kind of get that too. But it's just not worth it. An event like this is not worth it. Okay, so hopefully I'm having success here now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep up a single tab. I think that's the best thing to do from this point forward. I think that might have been my issue the entire time, changing tabs. I'm going to keep one tab open, and we'll just kind of go through together slowly, just taking a look at everything. But I'm enjoying this right now, kind of going from state to state, checking out the traffic cams. Providence is probably the heaviest snowfall I've seen thus far in terms of these traffic cams. But maybe we can take a look at some traffic cams in New York State now and see about the snow there, and then kind of move into Ohio eventually. Maybe I should do Ohio first, actually, because the snow is going to end there sooner, probably in that area. So let's see if we can do that. Yeah, I think what we should do is maybe check out. Yeah, let's check out Columbus. See if they'll let us go there first. That would be kind of cool to do. One of the favorite things I have about looking at the setup of the state of Virginia is 511, and I'm sure a lot of other states do this too, is being able to actually zoom into the roadways and see the traffic conditions at the same time. So Ohio's done that. And I'm sure, like Virginia, when you see red on a roadway, that typically means it's impassable. It's very dangerous conditions. And just like many states, you'll see these hazardous pop-ups on the screen here. So we'll see these exclamation points, right? And it'll tell us about different incidents. Yeah. So everywhere where you're seeing these little indications, right, in red with that exclamation point right on the screen, more than likely that is a hazard or an accident that's taken place around Columbus. Now, what we want to see though is these cameras. So hopefully I can figure this out here where we can actually see them. So let's take a look at that. And we got a bunch. So let's take a look at maybe the east side of Columbus. I imagine the snow is still coming down heavy there. And see if we can find a camera that we all like. Oh, let's do this again. So we can find some heavy snow. Here we go. Will it let me see more? Let's do a view large. And guys, I'm not sure if it's just going to be like these still shots or if it's going to be actual video. It looks like it's going to be still shots. So what we can see here is the snowflakes actually falling here. You can see the visibility even on the east side of Columbus. And yeah, the visibility is quite low here. People are still out. It looks like there's very few though and far between. And the roads are absolutely covered. This is one area that's probably had snow on the ground before, but now they're getting a lot of heavy snow with this storm. But again, beautiful. I'd understand why people would want to be out traveling in it. But hopefully, if it's dangerous like this, you're taking your time. It's for reasons like work that you're out. But yeah, that's Columbus there. What if we were to go a little bit further to the east? Does it get heavier still? So we have Buckeye Lake. Let's take a look at there for a moment. Maybe a place around that location. Now we can barely make it out here. I think it might have to do more with the camera than the weather. This is along I-70. It looks like one of those early digital images that we took with the early cameras that came out. And I remember working with them when I was a student in school, and the pixel quality would be absolutely terrible. This image reminds me of that. It's actually quite terrible. So let's exit out of this, see if we can find a different one. All right, so again, these are still shots, and I don't know how much it has to do with, perhaps my computer, because again, I'm just kind of new to these cameras in Ohio, but it's hard to make out how heavy the precipitation is here. We can see that the roads are snow covered, without a doubt. It's just hard to make out the amount of precipitation that's falling. Now, what if we were to go to maybe Parkersburg? Again, that was an area that probably changed over to sleet, at least briefly. So it'd be interesting to see a location around that to see what kind of weather we're experiencing. Now, this is actually interesting. It looks like they might have had some sleet and freezing rain even as far north as Parkersburg. So this is on the border of West Virginia and Ohio. Yeah, this is kind of crazy that the warm air moved up that high or that far north. And yeah, there might have been even a transition to rain here. Yeah, that's just crazy to think that it got that far north, but it did. Now, on our radar that we were looking at earlier near Morgantown, that might be a place in West Virginia we can take a look at later, but apparently it stayed cold enough there to be at least sleet and freezing rain. But I tell you, Parkersburg looks like it might have changed over to rain briefly. So if anyone's watching near there, even later, they pick up on this video, it'd be kind of cool if someone checks in and says, yeah, we did get some rain in Parkersburg versus that snow and sleet. Now, what about Wheeling? Do we have any cameras near here? This is the far eastern part of the state of Ohio. And this is really beautiful here. So this is traveling in eastern Ohio, getting towards western Pennsylvania. All snow here, right? That's kind of what we were seeing on the radar anyways, like towards Pittsburgh. Again, Columbus to Pittsburgh, right? It looked like it was going to be all snow for the duration of the storm. We're still seeing moderate to heavy snowfall here. So still probably got several inches to go in terms of accumulation in this part of the state. But yeah, again, another beautiful, beautiful image here. Now, what if we go west of Columbus? Has the snowfall come to an end in Springfield? Let's kind of take a look at one of these cameras here. See if we can find one that actually picks up really well. Okay, so this is the eastern part of Springfield. It looks like we have lighter snow here. So there might be some light snow on the back side of the system. And I don't know if you remember earlier, but looking at the radar, we saw some broken snow shower activity. That's probably what we're getting now west of Columbus. Still could see some accumulation, right? Probably 1 to 2 inches that could fall, but we're not seeing the heavy, consistent snowfall like we were seeing earlier today. But yeah, this is near Springfield, west of Columbus in Ohio. All right, so we've taken a look at Ohio. We had taken a look at Tennessee earlier. We've taken a look at some of the Northeast states. What I want to do now is kind of go into Pittsburgh and get an idea. So let's back out of Ohio for a moment. And we'll take a look at some of these places in Pennsylvania. And then, chat, what we'll do some trivia. We'll have some questions here. So guys, hopefully you can see this. This is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And probably like you assumed, and kind of what we talked about on the radar itself earlier, is that we had heavy snowfall moving into this part of the state. And it's going to stay all snow, right, in this part of the state. And that's what we're seeing here. All these cameras are near the city of Pittsburgh. Let's see if we can find a really pretty one to look at. Always like a backdrop with some rocks. So let's see if we can take a look at, this kind of gives us the best of both worlds. Let's take a look at this here. Maybe we can get a moving image here. And it looks like another still shot, unfortunately. And maybe it's my computer. I'm hoping it's that and not the situation here. Maybe we can look at this one and see something a little bit different. But you can see these passes through the mountainous areas, and we can see moderate to heavy snowfall here in Pittsburgh. Again, near whiteout conditions, not quite, but near whiteout conditions. That'd be another beautiful shot there. But unfortunately, these are not in motion. These are all still images. But in general, you can make out what's happening in Pittsburgh, right? Very heavy snowfall, probably accumulations of 1 to 2 inches an hour at this time. So probably several more hours of accumulating snow, right, in store through this evening. All right, so I think we'll leave it at that for looking at different states for now. We kind of looked at eastern Ohio. We looked at western Pennsylvania. We also looked at New York State earlier today, right, through the New York Mesonet. We took a look at that. That's a site I'd highly recommend for people that live in that area. We looked at Connecticut, Rhode Island. We'll later take a look at Boston. I think that'd be a fun one to look at. But yeah, let's do some trivia. I'm going to go to chat right now and take a look at what we have. All right, so thank you, Candy Jane, for the feedback and letting us know about, or letting me know about the black screen being an issue. I appreciate that. So I think what we'll do now, we'll have a trivia session. And you know, you've heard about this being a historic ice storm, more so than it being even a historic snowstorm. But why is that? And I think the first question I'm going to post in the chat has to do with the last time we saw an inch of ice. Let's say this: ice storm warnings in, let's say, 5 states. In at least 5 states. How about that? When was the last time we saw ice storm warnings? Let's make sure I type this right. Ice storm warnings in at least 5 states. One thing too I want to say before I start doing these questions is I want to have like a small gift that goes out to whoever gets the most questions right. So I don't care if you Google it. I don't care if you look it up. It's fine. And again, I might have it wrong as well, but this is kind of on the fly, these questions, but I thought it would be kind of fun to do. Whoever gets the most questions right here, I'll give a prize to. And it might be something that I ship from Amazon. But it'll be a surprise gift. And I hope to start doing these in the videos. Just something fun that's weather related. But yeah, we're going to start with the first question. I'm going to say number 1. When was the first time we saw ice storm warnings in at least 5 states? So if you want to take some time now to kind of look that information up or discuss it with people at home to come up with an answer there, this is the time to do it. So, of course, I don't want to give an answer yet. I think what I'll do, Chad, is I'll leave this question up for a time. And so if people want to Google it or, research the information, I think that's just as good, to be honest, because now you're looking up information about important weather and historical events. So I think that'd be kind of cool even in itself, if you want to take the time to do that. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is go back to the radar, take a look at what the current conditions are showing, see if there is any change in temperature in the mid-Atlantic, for instance, and whether or not we're seeing a change over to rain at any point. All right, so Candy Jane just responded and said, I need time, laugh out loud. Take your time. Take your time. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of competition today. But yeah, that will kind of lead into our second question too. So if you want to expand out your research, I think that would be fun, but also productive, because the other questions are going to have to do with the first. It's funny. I prepared all these tabs ahead of time on this laptop, and I can't use them. I just had to exit out of all of them because I think it has to do with the computer memory and whatnot. So that's become more of a hassle there. So I've just exited out of pretty much all of them. But yeah, if this works, we'll do this from now on for live streams. All right, so while people are looking up that information, the ones that are watching, what I'm going to do now is take a look back at the radar, see if there's anything changing. One state we didn't look at was Indiana, but it looks like a pretty good band of snowfall back for you guys in Indiana. So that's something we could have taken more of a closer look at. But yeah, places like Evansville, to Princeton, all the way up here to Indianapolis. There's some heavier snow moving through the state of Indiana, up even towards Fort Wayne. So could you guys easily see another inch or two? Yeah, definitely with that band moving through. Ohio, looks like Columbus is actually lighting up quite a bit. But again, you got more snow to come behind it. Eastward towards Wheeling. Again, we were looking at the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania before. We were seeing very heavy snowfall there, kind of whiteout conditions. Totally makes sense looking at the radar, right? And then Pittsburgh, we were looking at different cameras there, right along the outskirts of Pittsburgh. And yes, still heavy snowfall. And that's lining up with the radar at this time. One thing, again, that would be kind of cool to take a look at if we get time again before 4 p.m. is to take a look at this area around Harrisburg, Allentown, and to the north of it, you can see the darker blues. Hopefully this is showing up for you guys, but where you're seeing the darker blues, there's probably sleet working in. But again, it looks like Scranton's going to be all snow for now, maybe towards Williamsport. We don't know if it's going to be a change over there, but back towards Williamsport, maybe State College staying all snow. At least for now, looks that way. But there are signs, right? We can see these pink lines now extending up just to the east of Pittsburgh. It just shows you how well the warm air has worked into this system and how effective, really, this low pressure system over Tennessee really formed. And maybe we can kind of point that out, the projection of it here. Yeah, it's showing it back over here over northern Tennessee. Just holding strong, I guess. And it's creating a warm front, more or less, moving into New England. So all that warm air is able to surge north out of the Atlantic even and overrun the precipitation. So yeah, it's amazing how successful the warm air has been at working into the system. Into places like Harrisburg and Allentown, we're seeing a change over to sleet. New York City, I'm sure, is sleet now. Brookhaven, up into Stamford, I'm sure all those areas are receiving at least a mixture of sleet now at this time. Now let's go ahead and remove that front. It can be more confusing by having it on the screen sometimes. But yeah, you can see how the warm air has moved into Virginia Beach. Temperatures are still rising there. Around Newport News, I'm sure temperatures are around freezing or above, and they are at the current time. I think Williamsburg, you will probably see a change over to rain at some point. I think temperatures will continue to rise here along the eastern shore. And even as we look back into central Virginia, again, temperatures haven't warmed up that much, but they are warming a little bit. And that's just a sign of the warmer air moving into the area. But again, it's going to really struggle. We have teens in Blacksburg at the moment, teens in Roanoke. This area at most is going to see a change over to freezing rain rather than sleet. That cold air damming was very effective as well in this region. Greensboro, Durham, looks like temperatures are still hovering in the lower 20s here. Kind of want to give a shout out to some family that we have down here in, I think, Stamford, that area. So it's somewhere in here. If I can, Samford, not Stamford. That's what I need to remember here. Where's our Fayetteville? If I can find Fayetteville, I'll be in good shape here. For whatever reason, it's not showing up. But I'm really struggling to find it more or less. But yeah, here's Fayetteville down here. So yeah, Fayetteville even is in the upper 20s here. So areas to the north of that, going towards, yeah, here we go. Here's Sanford. It's popping up on the map now. Looks like you guys are going to stay in the low to mid 20s as well. So probably be all freezing rain when that band moves through central North Carolina in general. South Carolina is going to be more of a question mark. Temperatures have warmed along the coast more effectively here. 50 degrees in Charleston. So that shows you that warm air off the Atlantic is trying to come in. And it's not just from the east, right? You're actually getting warm air coming in from the west as well. So that's going to work to really mix the air from top to bottom. So it would not surprise me if temperatures warm above freezing here as we go forward in time. Athens has moved up out of the upper 20s into close to 30 degrees around town. It could rise above freezing before this entire, I guess, area of rain moves over top of you. It could very well rise above freezing before then. But again, I think maybe out towards Columbia and points northward, you might stay all freezing rain. It is possible. Even though you're battling warm air from the coast and warm air from the Tennessee Valley, Alabama, moving into your area, there could be some areas in South Carolina that stay above freezing or below freezing rather. So definitely a place like Rock Hill, just south of Charlotte. I could see that happening. Charlotte could definitely stay below freezing. Raleigh, and again, points north and west are going to probably have the best cold air damming in place. Yeah, it's crazy how Asheville, a place like that that's above 2,300 feet in some locations, is warm enough to have rainfall now. And you can see here around town, it's 34 to 36, maybe even, 34, 35, 36 degrees around town. And that's enough to have just plain old rain in the city of Asheville. And as you go south and west into the Smokies, temperatures warm even more into the mid 40s and even 50s. Again, that shows you how warm the air is above North Carolina right now that's moving overhead. What will be kind of cool to see too is the change in temperature over time in the southwestern part of the state in the higher regions. So if we want to get an early look at this, like in Roanoke, we should see the higher locations near Benton Mountain, where it's 19 degrees. That should rise up first before even the Roanoke Valley. So that would be kind of cool to take a look at. And even a place like Blacksburg, that should warm up ahead of time before Roanoke does. But that's something we can look at maybe going towards 4 p.m. It's not showing up currently, though. So some of these areas are still pretty high up near Wytheville. Again, lower 20s there. So a long duration period of freezing rain likely there. Further to the north, it looks like this dry slot has finally moved into places like Lynchburg, Appomattox, and Buckingham, even Amherst County. We now have this dry slot that's moved into much of the East Coast now, much of the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast. But we're not done. For people that live there, you're not done. And you've got perhaps the heaviest band of precipitation moving through. So if it is still sleet, it's going to be heavy sleet. But more likely than not, it's going to change over to freezing rain in this particular band when it moves overhead. Because once again, you're seeing temperatures in Asheville rise into the mid-30s. And then elevations higher than that are in the 40s. So I would imagine from south to north, that warm air is going to move in overhead. And the higher elevations, what we see there will indicate whether or not you see sleet versus freezing rain. And before we get into trivia and kind of check on answers to questions, I'm going to take one more look at upstate New York. Again, it looks like maybe the heaviest snowfall thus far has moved into the region. It's probably nearing whiteout conditions near Albany. Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Boston was already seeing heavy snow, right? So I would say from Albany to Boston right now is getting extremely heavy snowfall. And you can kind of see the difference between like northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, even the Adirondacks points south. You can see it go to that darker blue here. Yeah, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, all the way to Boston. There's a heavy, heavy band of snow moving into the Northeast. You guys further south in Scranton have seen heavy snow. I think it continues there in that area. Pittsburgh, still heavy snow at the moment. But guys, I think we'll leave it at that for a few moments, at least a few minutes, and we'll take a look at the live stream and see if we have any questions here being answered or asked. Candy Jane said 1993. That's a very cold year, and definitely we saw some heavy, heavy snowfall. The storm of the century actually occurred in 1993. So that's a good, I would say, a good choice in terms of a year where we saw extreme wintry weather. But even back in, I want to say 2009 or 2019, there might have been 5 states that had ice storm warnings at once. So there's the 2019 event, I think, across maybe the heart of the country. But if we're talking about what separates this storm from the rest is that we have devastating ice in the south, right? And in fact, for this storm, we have 10 states under ice storm warnings. I think the last time we had at least 5 states was maybe 2019. The last time was 2019 when we had 5 states or more with a So just to kind of give you some context, we have 10 states currently with ice storm warnings for this particular storm. Ice, of course, is far worse than sleet. Uh, it's also far worse than snow in terms of its impact. You can lose power for days to weeks. One of the things, Chad, I want to kind of bring up later is, okay, where are the current power outages in states like Mississippi, Louisiana? Could we see power outages in North Carolina? I think so. I think Southern Virginia, Eastern Virginia even could see some power outages. What separates this storm is just the number of states. It's having 10 states with that kind of issue makes it historic. It just hasn't happened in a while. And then also where it's taking place. You have, I think it's been 20 years since South Carolina had an ice storm warning, or this many counties under an ice storm warning at once. So it kind of shows you how anomalous or how rare this event is. And I think when people look back at this, they're going to look at the amount of ice. They're going to look at, also the amount of snow. But the third thing they're going to look at is the amount of cold air that came behind it. And this is going to be lasting for days, maybe even a week, in places that usually see a warm up afterwards. For people that live in the South, typically we might see snow, might see ice, but it's usually gone a day or two afterwards. This is going to be different. It's going to definitely hit different. So I think the next question I want to ask, and this is going to be very specific. What year, rather, I think this would be better. What year was the most devastating ice storm in the South during the 90s? So anybody that grew up in the 90s, basically, this is going to be a question for them. So what year, I should say during the 90s, was the most devastating ice storm in the South? And this directly relates to how historic this event is. And I would say just kind of look up maybe on Google or ask, AI even in this case. You could probably find the history very easily that way. What year it was that during the 90s where there was a devastating ice storm in the South. And the reason I bring it up is because it is the same concern we have here. I personally was affected as a kid. I remember not having water for maybe a week or two. I can't remember how long. But yeah, I remember heating up water on the stove, and I can't remember if we got it on the place we lived or not. We had to go out and actually heat it up on the stove, and that was both for hygiene and also drinking, I think. So that might be similar to what some people have to experience tomorrow or experience next week. So it's something that I think people will remember, especially people that are young that have never seen it. I think they will remember it moving forward. So let me ask that question then in the chat. What year during the 90s was the most devastating ice storm in the South? And that might give you an answer on Google pretty easily, OpenAI. and I'm going to go ahead and post it. All right, so we already have one answer from Candy Jane. So I think I'm going to leave a few moments here for other people to respond if there's any different answers. I see that we have a few people watching, so we might get some other answers here. And then we can discuss what is the right answer and what specific date it actually was. So I'm going to give people a few moments there. Okay, so in the meantime, let's go to a place like Western Mississippi. I think taking a look at the current photos in that particular area, north of Jackson, Mississippi, will kind of illustrate how significant this event is. So let's do that now. I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at that. This kind of gives you a hint to what the answer would be to the question. All right, chat. So this is probably photos from earlier today, but you can kind of get a glimpse of what is happening in portions of Mississippi. Again, this is further south, right, than what most people would expect. This looks like maybe a 1/4 inch of ice that's accumulated on the trees, maybe a little bit less even in this particular photo. Now, on social media earlier today, I was seeing photos with more than this. So I was kind of hoping this website would show a bit more in terms of what I saw earlier. But let's see if we can find something better. Let's exit out of this for a moment. And hopefully that's showing up in chat. Let's make sure. Okay. All right, so 37 minutes ago, 10 inches of snow has been reported in New Jersey, 9 inches in Pennsylvania, and 7 inches in New York. So that's a cool update to see here on the screen without looking for it. But that was as of about 30 to 40 minutes ago. And again, Chad, this is something I thought we would see better coverage of. It's just photos of what was happening in northern Mississippi. But what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to look at some traffic cams in that part of the state. So I'm hoping we have access to that. So we can get some cameras here available. Switch to video. right, so this is one bridge that kind of connects Mississippi to Louisiana. I guess near the Mississippi River, right? That we're looking at here. Can we actually zoom in a little bit further? Here we go. It looks like the precipitation's come to an end, but you can see the sleet completely covered in freezing rain, creating this glacier-like effect, right? This layer of ice on the ground and on the bridge itself. And what I believe is the Mississippi River in the background. But yeah, it looks fine on the trees here in particular. I see some, what I believe are sycamore trees off to the right. But yeah, I don't really see much in the way of coverage of ice on the trees there. Let's kind of back out of that for a moment. Maybe I can find another location here that does a better job at showing it. Okay. So this might do a better job at showing it, but we can see in this particular area here, northwestern Mississippi, we have a little bit more hanging of the trees, probably getting over a 1/4 inch of ice here in this location in terms of freezing rain. And then off to the right here, same thing here. I see a few limbs possibly falling to the ground here from the weight of the ice. And we can't get too clear of an image, and that's the reason I was hoping to actually find some still shots online. But we can see here where many of the trees are just absolutely covered in ice. And then we can see the sleet and snow that probably accumulated yesterday on this particular traffic cam. Unfortunately, a lot of these cameras are not working currently, and I don't know if it's because of the ice storm itself. Here we go. But once we get far enough north here in Mississippi, you see where we have more snow and sleet that's accumulated than freezing rain. And that probably is the case here in this particular video. Let's see if we can kind of take a look at this for a moment just to see it in motion. And you can see people are even willing to drive in northern Mississippi, even when the roads are completely covered in snow and ice here. And one thing too that we're kind of picking up on, if you look at the stoplight here off to the left, we have some wind that's starting to move into the area. So if it wasn't bad enough having freezing rain accumulating, we actually now have ice that's going to be moving back and forth on tree limbs, on power lines, and that could lead to more power outages right with time. And that will probably be the case not only tonight, but maybe even early tomorrow morning if we have more of these winds move out of the northwest, which is definitely possible. Things will not be melting either, probably the next couple of days, so there will be ample opportunity for that to happen. But this here in northern Mississippi, you guys probably saw more snow and sleet than freezing rain. Looks like you had several inches actually of snow and sleet here. So that might have saved you from any power outages that you might have experienced otherwise. But let's kind of exit out of this one. I was hoping to find some good images here of what happened in Mississippi, but I don't really see any good cameras or video here that would kind of tell us what the full story is. So this is an image of a place in Mississippi that really had no snow or sleet. Looks like mainly freezing rain. You can kind of see this grayish look to the trees in the distance. So you can see where there was freezing rain in this part of the state, but not much in the way of snow and sleet accumulation. Let's see if we can find some other cameras nearby. maybe do a little bit more justice. And I have an idea that a lot of these areas that we're seeing, like with these traffic alerts, probably had the worst of the storm. Unfortunately, there's very little in the way of cameras near New Albany in Mississippi, or even up near Boonville. That would be another prime area for freezing rain. No cameras really up there to speak of. And of course, when we move to the northern part of the state here in Mississippi, very little in the way of freezing rain. It was more in the way of snow and sleet in this part of the state. Let's take a look at this camera for a moment. This is actually really pretty. Yeah, completely covered in snow and sleet, the roads and the bridges here. Probably some freezing rain on top. But again, when you look at the trees in the distance, I don't really see a sign of trees really bent over with the weight of freezing rain. So from what I can tell, it's not really. I don't want to say it's not devastating because I'm sure there's areas here throughout this blue region in particular that received a lot of freezing rain. There are reports earlier of over a half an inch of freezing rain at the beginning of the storm. So I believe they've gotten more since then. And I would say just kind of if you live in Mississippi or even if you watch the national news later tonight, they'll probably come up with some really good images of what actually took place here. But from what I can tell on the cameras and what little bit of video I could pull up, I could not see the devastating ice storm that was talked about. But what was relevant here is that this was a state that had a lot of ice storm warnings. That was the case in Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then over on the East Coast in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. And if you look at it, I think even West Virginia had it, maybe even Maryland. But there was 10 states total that had freezing rain warnings with this particular storm. And it hasn't happened in a very long time. And the last time we had a really devastating storm, and this is what Candy Jane got right in the chat, was that we had a devastating ice storm in 1994. There was anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of ice that fell in Mississippi. Now, some of that was in the form of sleet, but we also saw a lot of freezing rain. And some of the images, if you were to Google them from back then, they showed tremendous damage. And people were out of school for weeks that lived in Mississippi and really all around the South, if you were to go back and look at it. Maybe we can kind of look that up for a moment, how devastating that was just in general. So the 1994 ice storm. And you can kind of see some of the images here, chat, just of how devastating it was. Some of these images showed like how bent over the trees were in places like Mississippi, but all the way up to Delaware. You see this image to the right here, far right? That's actually up in Delaware from the February 8th storm. You can imagine looking at this photo in particular, how much damage that did to the power lines. But again, I'm not seeing anything like that in Mississippi, just based off the videos that I'm looking at and the still images. This was very historic here, right? And this is something that had a dramatic effect on the infrastructure in that area. I don't see it from today's storm. And I think the only thing really historic about it is just the number of states that had those warnings and that prepared for this event. I think the storm from 1994 well outperformed what we saw today over the South. Uh, I was kind of sharing my story about this same event. I remember looking outside and just remembering how much of a winter wonderland it was, of course, but we had sleet, we had freezing rain, and we actually lost a lot of our trees around the house. And I grew up on a farm, and the fields that were connected to the farm had a lot of pines, and we lost a lot of our pine forest and even some of our old hardwoods from the event. And not only that, we lost power for a couple of weeks and had to find ways to get running water, right? Clean water to do, just some basic hygiene. So, yeah, I think today's event, um, for those that do lose power, and there could be a lot that lose power, yeah, you guys could be out for several weeks. And I think the latest report I saw earlier today was that there were hundreds of thousands of people without power. So I think the last thing that we will check here, and what does have an impact, is looking at these power outages from state to state and get the latest look at what's actually happening. And we might be able to quickly look at AI and actually get a quick answer on the latest reports of power outages around the country. So let's take a look at that. Candy Jane, you are the current winner here. I don't see anybody else responding in chat, so um, we might have time for one more trivia question. We'll see here towards the end. But I do want to take a quick look at those power outages, so we're going to do that next. All right. So if this is true, I always question it, but this is major outages by state. So right now there's 90,000 in Texas being estimated. There's approximately 80,000 in Mississippi, 70,000 in Louisiana. Tennessee, there's 30,000 without power. New York, even, there's 1,900 residents without power. So that gives you a general idea of the large number of people that are being affected by this. Just by looking at Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee alone, we have 200 and I guess 70,000 people without power there. So more than 250,000 people just in 4 states alone that have lost power. And I guess the most dangerous part about all of this is the cold air that's going to be following the system. Let's say if I wanted to look up a particular state, for instance, let's say I wanted to check out North Carolina power outages. See if we get an answer from that. So currently there's 18,200 customers without power statewide as of 2:15 p.m. in North Carolina. So we are starting to see some power outages there. And I expect those to kind of go up in the next hour or two because we have that heavier band of precipitation. Again, it's going to be all freezing rain for the Piedmont of North Carolina, up against the eastern side of the Appalachians. So Winston-Salem to Raleigh, I think that entire area is going to probably get a lot of freezing rain in the next couple of hours. So this number will probably increase, if nothing else. Let's see if we can ask AI this. What is the total number of power outages in the US currently? Well, This is why I don't trust AI. So we're now getting a completely different number for each state. Um, it's currently showing about 1 million people without power in the United States, and it's showing that Tennessee currently has 343,000 outages. I want to double check that now with the Tennessee like Department of Transportation or somebody, maybe the power companies themselves. And let's check that number, see if that's really the case, because that is a lot of people without power. And it's saying that Davidson County in Nashville, so that's part of the city of Nashville, has reported over 85% of its customers without power. That is crazy. And I think this is one final thought I can leave you guys with. Let's look at the HRRR model one more time. And let's take a look at what the temperatures are going to be in Nashville, Tennessee tonight and tomorrow morning. I think this will drive the point home to how severe this is. I've got a puppy dog that wants me to finish the live stream here, so we'll do that soon, honey. Let's take a look at this here. All right, so the HRRR. I'll make sure that the live stream can see this. It's currently showing above freezing temperatures as of about 3 p.m. But what about temperatures tonight? So again, I'll kind of focus your attention here where it shows about 28 degrees. That gives you a general idea as to like how cold it's going to get tonight. And over time, you can see temperatures by 9 p.m. are forecast to be 15 degrees. So if you can imagine for a moment not having firewood, not having electricity, not having something on backup to keep warm tonight, it's going to be difficult. And we can see as we move into perhaps early morning hours, really cold air is beginning to move into the area. And we can see some of these single digit temperatures move into the area just to the west of Nashville as we get towards 8 a.m. On Monday morning. So I really feel for people that are in this situation where you have this extreme cold, you have wind moving in, perhaps wind chills dropping below zero. And yeah, you've got this ice that's not going to go anywhere. And you can imagine if 85% of the county is taken out by this storm, it's going to take a long time to get power back to everyone. And this extends beyond Nashville, right? This extends through much of Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, parts of Texas. That whole region probably has a lot of power outages. And if it is true, if it is correct what we're seeing with AI, then we've got 1 million people possibly dealing with this tonight. And it is just something to keep in mind. Help your neighbor if you can, right? If you see them struggling. And it might be a few days till they get their power back. As far as the latest high resolution model, I kind of want to take a quick look at the projection for when the rain and snow will be out of the area. So I do want to kind of look at the thunderstorm activity first. That's severe over southern Alabama and southern Georgia, panhandle of Florida. It looks like much of that will come to an end probably by 7 p.m. I can see this system starting to break that down as it runs into colder air. So between 7 and 9 p.m., we probably will be done with the severe thunderstorm threat. Further north, you can see how things stay as freezing rain across the Piedmont of North Carolina and South Carolina. So you're going to see a really pretty glaze on everything, probably in upstate South Carolina, for Monday morning when you wake up. I'm sure North Carolina's already seen it with the accumulation of sleet that you saw last night, and the continued freezing rain today. I'm sure over Raleigh to Winston-Salem, you experienced that already with the precipitation that we've gotten so far. But this is only going to add to it. And what the HRRR is trying to show is some of this sleet still in the center of North Carolina. So I imagine that could be the case even up into Virginia. I do believe if there's going to be any change over to freezing rain in these places that have had sleet, it's going to happen probably this evening around 6 p.m. And I think, yeah, places like Lynchburg, Virginia probably will be seeing all freezing rain at that point. And it could add up pretty quickly. It's going to be a particularly heavy band of freezing rain that moves through the region. Now, points to the north, and we'll kind of run through this pretty quickly here. You can see where sleet is now falling in southern Pennsylvania, perhaps even some freezing rain in the Philadelphia area, sleet into New Jersey, up through Long Island. And let's see how far north it actually gets. The HRRR wants to kind of hold it there. So from southern Pennsylvania into Long Island, it looks like it wants to keep it very far to the south in comparison to what we were seeing on the radar. I do believe the sleet could work a little bit further north than what this model is showing, and it could affect totals into southern New York, perhaps into central Pennsylvania here, just south of Scranton, and maybe even to Hartford, Connecticut. I think this model may not be doing a good job of showing that. But even further to the north, I think we'll have moderate to heavy snow continue through the evening, and it start to die down, let's say, in portions of southern New York by 9 p.m. And then over Albany, we could see some moderate to heavy snow continuing up into midnight. So it will continue to accumulate possibly up to midnight up there. Boston, Massachusetts, same thing. You'll probably get snow through about 2 a.m. And again, 20 to maybe 24 inches of snowfall could fall in Boston by the end of this event. Well, guys, this about wraps it up for us. I'm going to go ahead and take one last look at the live stream and the chat and get an idea for if there are any questions. It looks like we have 7 people still watching. As far as any questions, does anybody have any concerns about this evening? Again, we only have 7 people at the moment, I think, watching, but about the weather in their area. Any questions about precipitation types or anything before I go? Well, guys, we'll probably leave it at that then today. I actually enjoyed doing my first live stream. I'm thankful for anyone that did show up and participate. I thank you for any feedback, of course, in the chat, or let's say if you watch this video later. I would appreciate it. But we'll leave it at that. Stay safe tonight, especially if you're in these areas that received ice and snow. This is something that's going to probably not wrap up until close to midnight for those that live in New England. Southeast, you have severe weather to even worry about along the, let's say, the southern part of Georgia, southern part of Alabama, up into the panhandle of Florida. So that entire region, probably through about 7 p.m., just be careful there. There is a tornado watch in effect. But all points in between, we have this ice and snow mix, right, that occurred. And I think just keeping an eye on your neighbor the next couple of days, seeing if they need anything, because it's going to be bitter cold and they could be without power. And sometimes it's just down the street that someone is suffering and it's not you, right? Maybe you've been blessed with keeping your power. But there are going to probably be a lot of people in need the next couple of days, and just being mindful of that. But once again, thanks for watching this stream, and I hope to have a video out perhaps as we get into next Wednesday. But we'll leave it at that for now. Bye.